All right, welcome everybody. We have finally made it to the countdown to the launch of FVM to mainnet. We're incredibly excited to have you all here today. Thank you so much for coming. Want to give a special shout out to all those tuning in on ETH Global TV. A note to those, so we have the roomers here and the Zoomers. So a note to those participating virtually or joining virtually, if you drop questions in the chat, we will be monitoring that and we'll try to surface that into the room for you. But definitely feel free to be engaged, be active, be lively, both in the room and here virtually. So we're incredibly excited. We have a jam-packed run of show for you today. And without further ado, we're going to dive straight into things, and I'll pass it over to Lucas, who will kick things off for us. Thank you.
Woo. Cool, thanks, Corey. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's event, the countdown to user programmability coming to Filecoin's Virtual Machine. The countdown actually ends 14 days from now, so the launch of FVM on mainnet is March 14th. My name is Lucas. I'm part of the team that is working to get the world excited about the potential of this new piece of technology. A potential, I hope, that will empower more people to create and capture value around data, and thus unleash really the full potential of an open data economy. My hope and my ambition is that, that gets us to an internet that is more resilient, more open, more equitable than the one that we're using today, and that's what gets me excited about this. Today, as you know, most of the value that is generated in the data economy is captured by only a small number of very large companies. And those, that oligopoly not only presents kind of a few central points of failure, I also would say it arguably slows the pace of innovation. So hopefully with the launch of FVM, we can change some of that. The introduction of FVM is part of Filecoin's broader roadmap, which aims to turn kind of the services of the cloud into permissionless markets that any provider can participate in. And the FVM specifically is a critical component of that larger vision, as it allows for programmability around the core building blocks of the Filecoin economy. So storage, retrieval, content-addressed compute at scale. And I'd love to take just a minute to make sure that everyone in this room at least has a high-level understanding of what a virtual machine even is. And then I'll spend some time just kind of walking through the agenda so you have an idea what to expect over the course of the next 3 hours or so. So with FVM, as I just mentioned, anyone can assemble these fundamental building blocks of Filecoin in useful ways. And there's really like kind of 3 layers to it. There's storage, which is what you know Filecoin to be today. Then there's this layer of compute over state, actually over Filecoin chain state, which will then also enable compute on top of content address data. When you hear compute over state or a state machine, what that really means is that FVM governs the mechanics and transactions and proofs around what, how, when, by, and for who data is stored on Filecoin's storage network, which has 13 exabytes of capacity, and in a way that reduces our reliance on centralized players, right? So to be super clear, FVM, while it does not interact with the data stored on the network itself, it allows you to interact with this metadata, and thus, eventually will unlock a lot of rich data interactivity. By, combining these building blocks that I just described, the what, how, when, by, and for who, and building programmability, being able to build software around that, FVM will allow more people to participate in the creation of capture of value around data. I've just put a few sample configurations here where you have perpetual storage of NFTs or things like data DAOs or staking that are really fundamentally just a combination of these different building blocks, which then can also be recombined into ever higher level services. I won't spend a lot of time on these now because we'll hear a lot about these throughout the day. Like one thing to just, as an analogy maybe, is that might be helpful, is that you can compare Filecoin becoming programmable to the moment when phones did, right? So this moment when you could launch apps on a phone really was a watershed moment for innovation and created a whole new economy of apps and services that weren't possible before. That's just the 30-second version of it. We will discuss all these concepts in more detail throughout the day, but you have a little bit of like what's a VM, and how does it tie kind of into Filecoin. We'll spend the next 3 hours or so basically in 2 segments. We will spend a bunch of time understanding what Filecoin Virtual Machine will unlock and is and does, and then we'll double click into a lot of the programming that we're offering for builders and even hear from some of the teams that have been building on FVM in the past weeks and months. Colin will start us off in just a moment, talking about FVM in the context of Filecoin's broader vision. He'll hand over to Molly, who is a technical lead on the FVM team, who will deliver a keynote kind of discussing this new data economy and that I hinted at just a second ago. And then Sarah from the FVM developer relations team will kind of double click into providing a technical overview of FVM. And then we'll round out this part of the day with a discussion between Matt and JV, kind of talking about how FVM will unlock value for users in the Filecoin economy, in Web3, and then even beyond. And then we'll switch gears a bit and shift our attention to the builders in the FVM kind of ecosystem. Nikki will tell us about all the programming that we've done over the past months, getting us to now hundreds of teams building on top of FVM in the test nets. She'll hand over to Robert, who heads our Orbit program, which is a community of Filecoin enthusiasts all across the globe, and do a recap of the Open Hack Days and share out some awards. And then Sarah will talk about the FVM early builders and get us ready into this showcase part of the day, where we'll hear from more than 15 teams who are actually building useful things with FVM today. And you'll see what's really possible. And then Colin and Corey will come on to kind of talk about an outlook on the types of support that are available for building in the Filecoin ecosystem around accelerators, hackathons, grants, and so forth. And then we'll end this part of the day with a panel led by Ruben, who heads our acceleration program, where he'll be joined by Gabriel and Shikai, 2 investors, as well as Vuk and Jonathan, who are FVM entrepreneurs, and then Denise, who helps startups in our ecosystem, with anything they need really, and they'll discuss kind of these opportunities for founders with venture scale ambitions. And then I'm super excited that Juan will be here to share some closing remarks on FVM and where we go from here. There are a lot of smart and kind people in the room, so I encourage you all to connect with each other. I'll be around for this happy hour networking session, so feel free to find me and everybody else who is seeking here with all your questions. And then one more thing, and then hand it over to Colin. If you are on Twitter, then I'd encourage you to point your camera at this QR code and maybe tweet about the event a bit. Cool. With that, I'll hand over to Colin. Thanks so much.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Give yourselves a big round of applause for coming to this incredible event. The energy is absolutely contagious in the room. I can feel it. I know you guys can feel it too. I'm going to set the stage a little bit on why FVM is important in the context of the overall Filecoin master plan today. So, as many of you know in this room and online watching, Filecoin is a crypto-powered storage network whose mission is to create a decentralized, efficient, and robust foundation for humanity's information. And today, Filecoin has become the scalable data storage layer of Web3. We are 99% of Web3's total decentralized storage capacity, 96% of total Web3 storage utilization, and have become the developer platform of choice for Web3 developers all over the space building on Filecoin. So give a big round of applause for the community to get there. But that is insufficient for our ambitions. Many of us are in this room today because we want to accelerate the transition from Web 2 to Web 3, where all of our internet interactions are done with total verifiability and trust, not just a subset of them. And in order to do that, to get Web 2 scale applications, think Twitter or YouTube or Twitch, to operate on Web 3 infrastructure, we need Web 3 storage and compute to become web scale for Web 3 to cross the chasm. And so that's why we're here today. The Filecoin master plan basically is a three-step kind of execution roadmap to get to that overall objective. Step one is build the largest decentralized storage network in the world. Step two is to onboard and safeguard humanity's data. And step three is to bring compute to the data itself to enable web scale applications. So I'll go into a few of those steps in a minute, but I did want to touch on what the launch of FVM does. And what the launch of FVM initiates is step three of that master plan. It brings smart contracts and user programmability to Filecoin and unleashes the enormous potential of a totally open data economy. Now, many of you might be thinking to yourself, Colin, smart contracts were popular in like 2016. Why is this a big deal today? And the reason for that is that smart contracts on the Filecoin platform enable a completely different style of use cases. Up top here, you see the fundamental building blocks of Filecoin: storage markets, retrieval markets, and compute over data. And what the Filecoin Virtual Machine does is this programmable layer underneath it that orchestrates where and how data gets placed, incentivized, governs. It gives rise to the concepts of data DAOs and programmable storage, which has never been done before in the history of the world. It makes storage markets easier to access, it makes retrieval markets more reliable, and it enables compute over data to exist on the Filecoin chain. And so all of this together really solidifies Filecoin as a very differentiated L1 that uniquely powers the open data economy. And that's why it's so important that smart contracts live on a blockchain like Filecoin, because it's a completely different L1 experience. But none of that really makes a lot of sense or really is as powerful unless we execute on the three-step roadmap for the Filecoin master plan. So I'm going to walk through a few of those steps today and the progress we've made to date. So step one, we have actually built the world's largest decentralized storage network. Yes. There are 3,800 storage provider systems across 44 countries around the world that provide 13 exabytes of storage capacity. This actually makes Filecoin larger than many public companies in the Web 2 world that offer centralized storage. And it's an incredible moat. Like, to assemble this scale of hardware across the world in a coordinated fashion is incredibly hard to replicate. And so this really differentiates Filecoin in step one as the decentralized storage platform in Web 3. What I'm super excited to report is that the percentage of storage provider systems that are actively engaged in providing super high-value services to the Filecoin ecosystem is increasing at a rapid rate. At the beginning of January 2022, there was about 3% of SPs that were storing verified deals. Today, there are over 20% of SPs in the network that are taking verified deals. And so SPs are finding unique ways to differentiate themselves in the network. Either they specialize on a particular client segment, let's say academia for large data sets or large open government data sets, or they have particular features that, that they market to unique clients. And so this is not only really good feedback, but there's a huge momentum to accelerate this into 40, 50, 60% over the course of this year. We see top-tier hardware vendors really leaning in with reference architectures and leasing programs. Seagate, who I believe is in the room, AMD, Supermicro, these are all providing valuable services to this emerging Web3 ecosystem, which is a huge testament to the importance of Filecoin in cloud storage. We see accelerator programs like the ESPA program in Las Vegas that are helping new SPs get started and training new storage provider systems around the world. And we are aiming for Filecoin to become the greenest storage network on the planet by making sure we measure the carbon output from storage providers around the world through our Filecoin Green program. And so all of that combined makes Filecoin really the world's largest decentralized storage network in the world. And a huge round of applause for all the SPs that have contributed to that ecosystem. Now, step 2 gets me really excited. Step 2 is about onboarding and safeguarding humanity's data, and we've seen a tremendous amount of progress here. In January 2022, there was 25 petabytes of data stored on Filecoin. And if you fast forward to today, that has increased 25x to over 600 petabytes of data across the network. Thank you very much. This is an incredible feat. This is the amount of business development conversations, data prep, data notaries, and actual storage data transfer throughout the network to get to this goal is absolutely amazing. And it's just a testament to the commitment of our community. In total, there are 600 petabytes of live data across 22 million active deals. That's 25x in the last 14 months. Our onboarding rate is 20x from about 0.2 petabytes a day to about 4 petabytes a day. And this really makes Filecoin the larger than many centralized cloud storage providers that are public today. And the good news is there is about 13 exabytes more space to fill with incredibly valuable data, and that's growing. There are over 1,400 unique clients that have uploaded data, and 23% of those have uploaded 100 terabytes or more. So we're seeing an increasing fraction of extremely large clients uploading to the system. And clients here, one client can include a data onboarder like Estuary or NFT.storage that may have thousands and thousands of users on the back end. This has been enabled for 2 reasons. One is large-scale data onboarding has been possible due to various on-ramps, things like Estuary, NFT.storage, Web3.storage, but also the underlying cryptoeconomic structures that underpin the Filecoin economy. And that's made many different types of clients successful, from hundreds of applications building on the stack to Web 2 initiatives that are now onboarding major Web 2 things like the Decentralized Storage Alliance with E&Y and IDC that's leaning into Filecoin as well. We've seen hundreds of data sets stored on Filecoin from academic institutions, governments, Web 3 data sets, and many other traditional clients. And this includes massive scale data science. Big shout out to Seal Storage that has onboarded the UC Berkeley neutrino research data sets onto Filecoin. It's incredible. There you go. And open governments like NYC that have stored open data sets on Filecoin as well. We see a lot of activity on our retrieval markets with the goal of getting to sub-second retrieval by the end of the year. Saturn launched recently, which many individual folks can download and earn Filecoin by participating in the Filecoin CDN market. And we have over 500 total funded teams building in the Filecoin, IPFS, and PLN ecosystems, ranging from grant funding all the way to Series C and Series D funding. And so we have made a tremendous leaps and bounds, even in the last few months, on onboarding and safeguarding humanity's information. Great, so that brings us to step 3, and that's really about bringing compute to the data to enable web scale applications. And the first step to initiate step 3 is the launch of the FVM project, which delivers on-chain programmability to the Filecoin network. So, as I mentioned, FVM kind of underpins and brings programmability around the fundamental building blocks of Filecoin: storage markets, retrieval markets, and soon and later this year, compute over large-scale data. It orchestrates where and how data gets placed, incentivized, and governs, giving rise to major new initiatives like data DAOs and programmable storage. And the best thing is that any developer in the Web3 space can deploy smart contracts to Filecoin, allowing more people to participate in the creation and capture of value around data. And so it really solidifies Filecoin as the L1 uniquely poised to power the open data economy. Now, what that means from a market size perspective is that it opens up the world of kind of existing Web 2 market sizes from storage and retrieval to something like compute, which is an order of magnitude larger and enables much more businesses to use Filecoin to kind of drive economic activity and move from a Web 2 paradigm to a Web 3 paradigm. We'll go through a few examples of what this means over the course of the day, but 3 I'll point out are perpetual storage, data DAOs, Filecoin staking, and more. And we've seen tremendous momentum from hackathons producing thousands of different hackers, people building perpetual storage solutions, DeFi type loans and staking, and many teams that are actually already starting to get venture capital funding building on the FVM itself. You know, even pre-launch, that's a remarkable feat. Great. So once we onboard the world's information, which we're in process, we launch FVM, that enables us to launch other kind of services like large-scale compute over Filecoin data. And this will really enable massive Web 2 applications to finally make the transition to Web 3. This really will look like many different types of L2 decentralized compute networks over the Filecoin L1. And the reason for that is it's really hard to optimize over all different types of kind of variables. So Juan's triangle outlines 3 of them: privacy, verifiability, performance. You'll notice that different L2s will focus on different specific feature sets in decentralized compute and onboard different kinds of users as a result. That will also enable us to store and compute the data of all other chains. We've been doing this in the past, but FVM makes this dramatically easier for smart contracts and other ecosystems to store their data on Filecoin, retrieve their data off Filecoin, and then cause computation to happen over that data on Filecoin as well. And so you can think of Filecoin as really linking into the other Web3 ecosystem by providing these incredibly valuable services enabled and made easier by FVM. Finally, next generation scalability is also enabled by FVM. There's one particular version of this called Interplanetary Consensus that's in development and will aim to launch an alpha later this year. And that will aim to move the scalability of all blockchains, but especially Filecoin, from something like hundreds of transactions per second to billions and hopefully over the years, trillions of transactions per second. That is a transformative moment in the moment of Web3 and will enable us to bring on major Web2 style applications like Twitch or Twitter or YouTube onto Web3 verifiable tech. That enables massive scale data science to be done on Filecoin and of course bring web scale Web3 applications. So that's the 3-step master plan. Step 1, build the world's largest decentralized storage network. 2, onboard and safeguard humanity's data. And step 3, which we're initiating in a couple weeks, bring compute to the data to enable web scale apps. The launch of FVM really solidifies Filecoin's position as an L1 uniquely poised to power the open data economy, and initiating step 3 of that master plan in 2023 will finally enable Web3 scale applications to run on Web3 native tech. So that's my presentation, but before I leave, just one plug to the builders in the room today and that are watching online. There is literally no better time to join the Filecoin ecosystem. As you'll see throughout the day, and I'll come back on stage in a couple hours to talk about all the resources, education, hackathons, grants, accelerators and mentorship programs, and capital and funding that's waiting to support you to build on the FVM. Now's the best time to join, so I'm so excited that you're in the room and watching online. And with that, I will pass it on to Molly to talk about the new data economy unblocked by FVM. Thank you.
Thank you again, Colin. And just to recap some of the pieces Lucas said, we're starting here zoomed out, and these first few talks really positioned this exciting launch to mainnet in the context of the larger master plan, the Filecoin master plan. And Molly now is going to dive more deeply into the unlocked capabilities that this launch has, specifically around the new data economy. So give it up for Colin, give it up for Molly.
All right, I 100% agree with what Colin was just saying, which is there is no better time for builders to get involved in the Filecoin ecosystem. And really what I want to talk with you all about today is what have the early builders who have gotten excited, got their fingers deep into FVM pre-mainnet launch, what have they been building? What is poised to launch with FVM in unlocking some of those new use cases? And how can you come take advantage of it, learn from that, and also get involved more deeply. So as Colin was mentioning and others, FVM is allowing more and more people to create and capture value around data, and it's unleashing massive potential. We're so excited to bring this open access and kind of permissionless upgradability into the Filecoin ecosystem, harnessing all of the amazing developers who can bring new capabilities into Filecoin, who can build new layer 2s, new applications, new things like retrieval markets, compute over data markets, and upgrade Filecoin and all the capabilities we're using here. As we've mentioned in a couple of previous talks, there are so many things that Filecoin and FVM unlock, things like data DAOs, on-chain voting, DeFi for storage providers, storage insurance, smart storage markets and contracts that can automatically self-repair and self-heal, decentralized verifiable computation, and much, much more. So we're really excited about all of the new capabilities that a huge community of developers can permissionlessly add into Filecoin on a day-by-day basis. And I've already talked back in Lisbon about all of the cool, exciting things we hoped would be coming to Filecoin. So if you haven't seen that talk, check out the QR code, and you can watch that on your own time. But today I really want to dive into what have people been building? What is actually coming at mainnet launch for FVM, and shortly thereafter as well. And so here is a great place where you can go check out the whole list of FVM early builders. They've been working for the past 4 or 5 months, building on top of FVM, participating in hackathons, adding new tooling and components. I think actually our initial V0 cohort of early builders started at the beginning of last year. So a lot of work has been happening for a long time, and I want to dive into a couple of concrete examples so you can really see the power that FVM is unlocking today for Filecoin. So one of my favorite examples that I've been collaborating with the team on is helping use the FVM to really unlock the vision of long-term verifiable storage. And NFT.storage is a great example of a client that has always had that vision at heart. Started out as an application that NFT creators and marketplaces could use for long-term verifiable persistence, and they are going to be using a smart contract on FVM to do automatic renewal of those storage deals, storing the humanity's most exciting and cherished digital assets, so that those stay on Filecoin for the long term and can automatically renew and self-repair over time. So it's an amazing first step towards that long-term vision of NFT.storage fully becoming automated and a smart contract in and of itself with no central intermediary or organization that you have to depend upon in order to make sure your NFTs are trustlessly, verifiably stored in perpetuity. And so they're a great example of these kind of like permanent, use air quotes because nothing is ever 100%, but that will automatically self-repair in hopefully 99.9% of cases into the future that helps keep everyone's data safe. Another great example of what people are building today are Glyph staking pools. And I think Jonathan is somewhere in the house or going to be here shortly. We'll be able to talk to you about this more later today. But a huge area within FVM that many folks are excited about and haven't had access to until just this moment around the corner is the ability to connect the storage demand and the token availability so that we can meet the collateral requirements that storage providers have to keep growing the amount of useful data being onboarded into Filecoin, and so that token holders have the option to put their tokens to good use within the network in order to help accelerate data storage in Filecoin. And so it's really harnessing the fact that this is a useful proof of work network that can put these assets to use fundamentally within the protocol. There's also a lot of teams that are using Filecoin and smart contracts to enable new use cases. And so Saturn, which is the Web3 CDN that's building the Filecoin retrieval market, is a great example for this. They have already written, and I think it's deployed on Hyperspace, which is our pre-mainnet FVM testnet, a retrieval reward smart contract, which allows them to pay out all of the 1,370 retrieval providers that have joined Saturn just in the past 3 months, and be able to pay out retrieval rewards to all of those participating point-of-present CDN nodes. And then they can do that trustlessly within the Filecoin network, really taking that first step towards being a full layer 2 retrieval market. There's also just a whole plethora. I don't even know the full set of exciting DeFi staking and loan platforms that are happening, cross-chain swaps, just so much kind of like permissionless innovation that's happening here, where Filecoin token holders haven't had access to all of that. Ability to earn yield on tokens, ability to collaborate really seamlessly across other ecosystems with cross-chain bridging. And so this is a really critical area that many teams are jumping in to make sure that those capabilities come as soon as possible to the whole Filecoin token holder ecosystem. There's also other groups that are working on long-term perpetual storage, and Lighthouse is a great example. They have been a huge component of the early builders community. Many of folks in the Space Warp Hackathon have been building on top of Lighthouse to have that perpetual long-term endowed storage so that your files can live on not just for a 1.5-year storage deal, but 50, 100, who knows how long within the Filecoin network using kind of Lighthouse's decentralized long-term storage. And so definitely want to shout out to them. I know they're going to be presenting more later today as well. One area that really you've never seen this before, and this is a new area that I just expect we're not going to realize all the potential up front. It's going to keep evolving over time, is the potential of data DAOs. And I know Charles Cow is going to talk about Lagrange DAO and what they're doing. But this is a huge opportunity for collective groups to form around data curation, data governance, data ownership, and data monetization so that they can curate high-value data sets. They can permission access to those data sets. They can grow the value of those data sets over time through things like compute networks that maybe help tune those data sets for different audiences that might find them really high value, and then they can reinvest those profits into the growth and differentiation of their data long term. And you can do this without anyone having a central credit card for an AWS account. You can do this with a group of friends. You can do this without having any individual in the loop at all. It can just be a multi-sig that is governing that collective. And that's literally never been possible before. Centralized storage does not make that possible. And I think we're just scratching the surface of the sorts of applications that people are taking this with. There's a ton of specialized data DAOs that are focusing on different use cases, like making sure that individuals can send their data and down to their generations to come into the future, or so that you can do trustless data access where you never unlock access or decryption keys for your data until you have a threshold network that can in a decentralized way identify that the conditions have been met to decrypt your data openly. So you can have drop boxes for data that will automatically self-decrypt sometime in the future. So there's just really, really exciting things to happen here on the intersection of blockchain programmability without a centralized player and the data storage of Filecoin. Last but definitely not least, we're so excited about the work that bringing compute and FVM together unlocks. And a great example is the work that the Bacalhau team has been doing around stable diffusion compute, creating NFTs, minting them on Filecoin, all from an FVM smart contract. This is so freaking cool. It's like, jumping out of a sci-fi novel. But we're actually seeing being able to have any user go input their own prompt, get a set of images computed for them from the Bacalhau Stable Diffusion Network, and then mint those as NFTs on Filecoin with long-term permanent storage. That is combining so many cool new primitives together. I hope you guys are as excited as me for what that's going to unlock. And it's just scratching the surface. There are so many other really exciting use cases for how you can bring together compute and long-term storage as well. So as everyone knows, we are just 14 days away from mainnet launch. Countdown starts here. It's 2 weeks. We are on track. The final release of FVM is out, and our upgrade timeline is on track. So I hope everyone is super, super excited. Huge, huge congrats to the FVM team, the Lotus team, the Phil Infra team, everyone who's been involved in making this launch happen. It's taken an entire village across many, many different groups. And so thank you to all of our early builders. Thank you to everyone on the launch team, the outer core team, the network goods team who have been part of making this happen. It's super exciting. And please get involved in building on top of all of their hard work. This is just the start. We are here to scratch the surface and then take it 10,000 miles forward. So thank you so much.
Give it up for Molly. It's super exciting. And if those recent presentations haven't convinced you, it is incredibly clear that it is the best time to be a builder in the Filecoin ecosystem. Today is the best time in history to be a builder in the Filecoin ecosystem. So we're incredibly excited to welcome up to the stage next Sarah, who is the developer advocate dedicated fully to builders that are focusing on building on FVM. So please give it up for Sarah.
Hi, hey everyone. My name is Sarah. Good to meet all of you. As Corey mentioned, I am a developer advocate on the Filecoin Virtual Machine team. I joined Protocol Labs 6 months ago. In my mind, it feels like 2 years, or I measure my time in tip sets now. But sorry, joke if you understand FVM. And so it's taken me a while to get to understand what FVM is about. But what I'm here to do today is to kind of give a clearer understanding to those of you who are new to FVM, or if you're not a developer but you're super interested in all the applications that are being built and you want to know what it's about. I'm here to give you some easy takeaways, and at the end of this session you should walk out being like, cool, I think I can start developing on FVM if I wanted to. So to help me out, show of hands here, how many of you are familiar with what the FVM is? Cool. And how many of you here are Solidity or have Solidity developers or have deployed a smart contract before? Awesome. Okay. Kind of a half-half situation, so it didn't really help me out with deciding how I should go on this, but I'll still get you through this. I'll explain conceptually, and then I'll give you some easy tools to show you how the Ethereum-compatible version of the Filecoin Virtual Machine is available in 2 weeks, and it's actually available on the testnet as of today. And you can go back and start coding. So without further ado, let me get started. The Filecoin Virtual Machine project delivers on-chain programmability to the Filecoin network. What does that actually mean? It means that what you can do is to add programmability around your storage. Right? So that will then enable web-scale solutions. How we see it is very much how you see servers today. You have a whole bunch of data stored in a database in the backend, and then you have all the programmability bits that you built around that data to enable your applications and solutions. As of today, before FVM is launched, right now you can use smart contracts, but you will have to write to storage within your smart contracts. So that is costly. It's not as performant, but in a native environment with FVM, we foresee that those issues can be resolved. Cool. So why FVM? Let me give some key points about how we think the FVM is a little bit more different and what value it can bring to you. So first of all, it meets developers where they're at. The FVM itself is a polyglot machine. It is using Wasm time under the hood, which means that many different languages that whatever you're comfortable using will then be able to compile to Wasm, right? So if you're a Python developer, JavaScript, or maybe hold on the Python, but JavaScript, WebAssembly, you can actually use your language that you're comfortable with and then build on the FVM itself, right? The other thing is around how it's built with multi-chain support in mind. What this actually means is that the FVM is built to be VM agnostic. As of today, we are very excited to launch our Ethereum compatibility in 2 weeks, but after that, everything has been built with a VM agnostic infrastructure in mind. So we should also be able to enable it for other chains like Polygon and so on. And what this means for developers is that you can use all the tooling that you're really familiar with and then deploy it to the FVM itself. So you won't actually see this that much. You would just be able to connect your MetaMask wallet, and I'll show you in a little bit how you can do that. And you can use everything that you're familiar with, Remix, Hardhat, whatever it is, deploy it, and it should go into the Filecoin network, accessing your storage, and having the programmability that you've written in your smart contract. Around fine-grained control, we've also built it a little bit differently, where we spent a lot of time building out, our engineering team has spent a lot of time debating back and forth on how we can make it really controllable for developers in the sense of like low-level system calls using Wasm time. You are able to have much more control over which syscalls you want to call. It's also, everything here is built IPLD native, and what that means is that you will be able to get down to things like checking the state of the actor, checking the state of the account itself, so you will know all these specific details, and then you can decide how you want to change your application, how you want to change your code. That's very much how we see it, and we want to allow that kind of granularity with the FVM itself. So a little bit on the structure over here, just to give you a sense, we have built in, there are a few components over here. We have built-in system actors on the Filecoin network, and that is what the FVM will interact with, and I'll show you a little bit how that happens in a bit. We also have user-defined Wasm actors, so these will be FVM native that comes later in 2023. And then we have the foreign runtimes, which is the Ethereum, the later on maybe the Polygon, and so on, and we hope the community helps us to build that out as well. So we support these 3 different kinds of actors. The ones that developers will be interacting with will be the user-defined Wasm actors and the foreign runtime interacting with the built-in system actors that are on the Filecoin network today. And then everything sits onto the Filecoin node, so if you're wondering like a map of where we are, this is where you will be sitting. The FVM will be sitting on top of a Filecoin node. So a new instance will be created every single time that you deploy the smart contract. Okay, so March 14th, 314, Pi Day, which is why you see all the emojis there. Coincidentally, our chain ID is also 3141. So 314 is like a number that you should definitely remember. We will be launching the mainnet Ethereum compatibility. What that means is that we are meeting smart contract devs where they're at. All you EVM developers, we've had multiple hackathons today with the ETH Global crowd. So for those of you that are listening and you've been in our hackathons, you know that how seamless it actually is. You can use we support native Ethereum addresses, so you'll never have to really see any other kind of addresses except for your Ethereum one, even though you are interacting with the Filecoin network. We also support Ethereum accounts. So through account abstraction, we have created a new actor just to represent the Ethereum native account. So your smart contract would not have to start from an externally owned account. It can start directly from the smart contract itself. So we think that will really increase performance. And then also we have a fully feature-complete Ethereum JSON RPC. You will see that once we have a few hosted endpoints that you can easily tap into so that you don't have to run a node yourself, and that should enable your development much quicker. So why is this such a big difference for developers today? If you run a team of developers, you are a founder, you want to know what's so exciting about this. So for the first time ever, developers are interacting with the Filecoin protocol. Prior to this, according to the Filecoin master plan that Colin shared earlier, we have focused a lot on the storage network and onboarding data itself. This has been largely accomplished by our storage provider network, but the developers have never had to interact with these storage deals, right? You will mostly just code it somewhere else, write your smart contract in EVMs, Ethereum network, and then write to storage itself. But for now, you will be interacting with the Filecoin protocol directly. And how you can do that, so if you see over here, you have the FVM, you will be calling methods from our built-in actors. So we have a whole bunch of built-in actors that are already on the Filecoin network, and these run a lot of the operations for our storage network. So we have storage market actors that deal with your deals, all the deal operations. We have a miner actor that deals with all the miner operations. So if you're thinking about like withdrawing balance, adding balance, and so on, the FVM and how you write your smart contract will be able to call these methods and interact with these built-in actors for your solution to run. To give an example for the FEVM, and again, because we are VM agnostic, this is just the Ethereum version of it. We're not saying it's only Ethereum. It might be other things, and it will be other things in the future. But an example here is that on the FVM, over here we have a Filecoin.sol library. We've actually created a library to enable more seamless interaction with the Filecoin protocol. You would write your FVM in FEVM in Solidity. You would then import the Filecoin.sol library, which was created by one of our partners, Zondex. You can call functions like get balance, add balance on how you want to deal with the different accounts, like the miner accounts and your storage accounts on the network. And then it will call to the built-in actors directly, and that's how you would interact with it. So it should be pretty seamless. You would not really see all this. All you would see is your Solidity code. So that's really the goal over here, and that's why it's such a big, we are really, really excited for all this value that we can bring to developers in the community. I won't go through this too much, but one of the things that we're excited about as well and what the FEVM enables and the FVM enables is that as of today, before FVM came into play, we have a deal-making flow on the Filecoin network, and so this is what storage providers have had to be really focused on. They have to be technically competent. They need to know how all this works, right? So I won't get into this, but a lot of people are involved, right? And it goes on-chain, off-chain, on-chain, off-chain. You have to activate multiple people to get your storage deal made. With FVM, you can actually automate some parts of that. We have two options as of today. One option is the deal bounty contract. So what that does is that you can write a smart contract, you put your bounty in it, and then you wait for a storage provider, for a bounty hunter, or the bounty hunter can be the storage provider themselves, to then see, oh, that's a deal proposal, has money in it, I want to go make the storage deal for this person, I'll pick it up. And then once the deal has been made, I'll send you back the deal ID, and then the developer or the user themselves who has put the smart contract out will never actually have to deal with the deal-making process themselves. So I think that simplifies the flow a lot more, and it also incentivizes people to pick up your deals and to make your deal happen. The other new method, which was actually just enabled last night, and we were super excited. We actually fast-tracked the timeline. My teammate Zach did an amazing demo today on how you can enable this new piece, which is a client contract flow. And so what this means is that no third party is required. Earlier I mentioned you have in the previous example, you have the user, you have the developer, you have the bounty hunter, and then you have the storage provider. In this case, you will only have to put it into a smart contract, and the smart contract will go make the deal with the storage provider themselves. These two methods are really good for very different use cases. So in the previous method, if let's say you are part of a DAO, you have data, you have a designated storage provider that will pick up your bounty and make the deals happen, that is a great process for that, to ensure that your data is stored. But if let's say you want to automate a lot of these processes and you have like a constant determined flow of data that's coming in, let's say you want to monitor traffic, this would be great for backing up your data. So the data will come in, it would then batch all that data because it already knows how often all that data comes in. It sends it to the storage provider, and if you have a designated storage provider to then make all those deals happen, it can quickly back up your data depending on the cadence that you set. So these are both really great options for different use cases, and we think that that's going to change the way that the Filecoin network provides value today. So I'm going to run through a few tools. I know it's been a mouthful on the technical part. I hope that it gave you a better sense of what the FVM is and what it can do and what it actually means for the technical side of things. Some tools, if you're a developer, we have a hyperspace testnet that is ready. This is a network that will not change. We're not going to change it after mainnet, and we also will rarely reset it. We might upgrade it from time to time, maybe one reset in every 3 to 4 months, but it's a stable developer testnet. So if you want to try your applications, definitely head to the hyperspace testnet and try it out. We have mock miners over there that will make deals with you. So if you don't actually have to test it in the mainnet and then know like, oh, did my deal proposal go to the storage provider and does my application work? If you test it over here, the deals will be made automatically and your application can be tested from there. We also have block explorers and hosted endpoints. A few examples here, but I didn't put the URLs here because it's hard to key into your phone. But we have block explorers, about 5 to 6 of them as of today. We have Glyph, we have Barracks from Zondex, we have Starboard, Filefox, and so on. We have a lot more block explorers that are coming up, and these are all FEVM compatible. So once we launch the mainnet, these should be able to allow you the same capabilities that you see with Etherscan today. We also have hosted endpoints. We have partners like Chainstack and Glyph, and these are what I talked about earlier on. So if you don't want to set up a node yourself, you can always go and use these endpoints directly. Filecoin and MetaMask, just highlighting over here that it's really seamless for you to connect your MetaMask wallet to the Hyperspace testnet, and we hope that the same, we're building it such that the same process will be enabled once we launch the mainnet. You can simply go onto Chainstack. With 2 clicks, you will get your wallet connected to the Filecoin network and with your MetaMask wallet. And then familiar tooling like Remix, Hardhat, these are all toolings that you can now use as an Ethereum developer. Again, we've had hundreds and hundreds of hackathon projects that have come out of this, so really easy to go build if you're an Ethereum developer today with FVM. So yeah, all in all, that's in a nutshell, everything that you can do with FVM. I hope I give you a little bit more knowledge on that. But here's a link tree to everything that you want to get started with FVM if you want to get started building today. And we'll be around, and we'll see you around ETH Denver. We hope to give more demos on how you can actually build what we showed here today. But we're really excited to see all of you in the upcoming hackathon. Thank you.
All right, incredibly exciting. So next up we have a fireside chat between our favorite Philfluencer, Matt, whose handle is Hammertoe, and then Jonathan Victor. So if y'all can start making your way up here, we'll go ahead and get started. But I think one thing that's incredibly exciting that sort of extends beyond the imagination of even the team working on the FVM day in and day out is something really Molly mentioned, and I think Sarah touched on, which is we don't even know all of the ways in which this technology will be used, things like data DAOs and other applications of that sort. So it's incredibly exciting just to be in a position where we're all basically going to be blown away, I think, by a lot of the creativity that the builders channel into using FVM for new and unique applications. So incredibly exciting to come to that, and we'll dive in now here.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Corey. Yeah, my name is Matt Hamilton. I'm a developer advocate on the FVM team. And JV?
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Jonathan Victor, also go by JV, and I'm one of the ecosystem leads at Protocol Labs.
Cool. If we can, the next slide here. So there's a QR code here. I don't know if JV needs to move out of the way. But if anybody wants to ask any questions, so we're going to be talking about Web3 and kind of the role of FVM within that and what it enables. And if you have any questions that you want to ask, then scan that QR code. It'll take you to a Slido form, and you can put the questions in there. And if we have some time as we go through, we'll answer those too. So that's the audience participation part, right? So, okay.
Yeah, well, maybe just to kick it off. So I guess today we're going to be talking about the FVM and how it unlocks value for the Web3 economy. Maybe just to start, I guess, Matt, how do you think about the FVM versus other L1s? How do they complement each other, compare? How do you think about it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the main things to note is that Filecoin is not really competitive, at least not competitive in a bad way, against other blockchains, right? It's complementary to a lot of other blockchains. So yes, you can run now with FVM and FEVM, you can run smart contracts on here that you could port over from, say, other EVM blockchains. But we think that the real value is that you can use them alongside the rest of the Web3 world, right? You don't have to necessarily sort of pick and choose. One of the great things with Filecoin, historically, is it has been used by a lot of other projects, right? So that's I think that's one of the main things there.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting features is Filecoin as an economy is building out all of these real world services. So storage is the first service that we have. We'll have the retrieval markets for distribution. We'll have transformation with all the computer for data networking that's going on. And so the interesting thing is as a category expansion of like what is possible in Web3, the FVM is just now saying like anyone can trigger from other ecosystems or inside of the Filecoin ecosystem these services that can now be rendered in the real world. So like hopefully from like what will people do with these composable building blocks, it's not just saying like inside of Filecoin's economy we have these services, it's also asking the question inside of like the Solana ecosystem, what would you do if you could use DeFi there to fund activities inside of the Filecoin ecosystem to go do things in the real world like distributing content. Maybe to poke you a little bit, what do you see as some of those use cases?
So, I mean, one area that we've seen a lot is, Filecoin is a collection of services, right? You've possibly seen Juan Benet's kind of master plan for Filecoin, and that is to store data. That's the first bit is basically build the world's largest decentralized storage network, and we're very well on the way. Well, we've done that, right? It is the largest storage network, decentralized storage network. Then store humanity's data. Then add things like compute and the ability to manipulate that data on. And that's the area that we're at now, I think, in enabling these services to manipulate the data. So things like AI, for example, kind of compute at the edge. There's another project within Protocol Labs called Bacalhau, which is part of the Compute Over Data project. And that offers some really interesting use cases when combined with the FVM, because you can do that processing of data kind of out on the edge of the network, but then you have a smart contract system to handle things like orchestration of those jobs, payment of those jobs, storing proofs that those jobs have been run, for example. So that's, I think, a big aspect of it.
100%. Like one way I think about it is, so Filecoin, you could think of like there being data services. So like storage is a data service, retrieval, computation. Those are things that you want to be able to like trigger those actions to happen from the storage providers, from like retrieval nodes, from people who are doing transformations. But also related to that is like, how do you do the payment for those services? So when we think about even just like the capital services on the network, once you have programmability of value, you can start saying like, I want to offer, and the example Sarah gave, like a bounty to someone if they're willing to go store my data. Or if I want to give a loan to a storage provider to say, hey, I will give you a cheaper cost of capital if you store my DataDAO's data, as an example. So you can start using the financial primitives to help accelerate and also enable some of the data services that are like also happening, but just keeping those two much more tightly coupled together.
Yeah, and making, like you say, the capital more efficient, right? The usage of capital more efficient. So storage providers need to stake fill in order to provide their services as collateral. So the ability to be able to offer loans markets now to that, and being able to borrow near instantly fill collateral liquidity in order to enter the market is really powerful. Because at the moment, yes, there's some loan providers and lending services, but they are permissioned kind of traditional style services, whereas now moving it onto kind of more of a DeFi type approach using smart contracts. You can even have things like flash loans where a storage provider could actually borrow the fill needed specifically in real time for the deal that they're about to take on, which is pretty cool. So, JB, how do you see like Filecoin impacting Web3 in general?
Yeah, I mean, so I sort of touched on this before. I think like one of the things that I like to think about is inside of Web3, there's so many people doing interesting things so like take gaming as an example. So you have teams that are building their own game economies and like they're figuring out how to balance that, all of that good stuff. Separately, they're also contracting a bunch of services outside in the real world where it's like, okay, we're gonna have some amount of our tokens that we're selling, whether it's the dev team or someone else, in order to like go fund like the actual distribution of their content, the servers that like these games are running on. I think one of the fascinating ideas, once you set up these like protocol native like loops, is it means you can actually move away from saying like, okay, we need someone who's running this infrastructure. This requires like retrieval markets, compute, and all to be like fully rolled out. But you could imagine basically having a game economy that's like balanced appropriately and so on, but having parts of that like flow out to land in a smart contract that just then funds the perpetual distribution of the content. So like, so long as there's people playing the game, so long as the economy is robust, you also have a self-funding mechanism for how the actual distribution of those assets are like perpetually like funded. And I think the part that gets interesting is then it doesn't require any individual party to be there to make sure that these assets are still like alive, that the game is still running. It just requires the game to have like users for the game to actually be built in a sustainable and sound way. which I think we're like a little bit away from that actually being reality, but I think it sort of like sparks the imagination of like, what does this actually mean? Like, why is permissionless payment rails actually interesting? It's like you can now further segment like the physical and the digital worlds, where so long as the digital economies are actually robust, you can now contract with like the real world services that you will need in order to like persist the assets.
And I mean, one of the questions that we've just had come in is regarding like comparing the cost between like S3, Amazon S3 and Filecoin. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and maybe about how like Filecoin, and talking about like the economy within Filecoin and keeping value within the Web3 world?
Yeah, I mean, so Filecoin today is like much more like cold verifiable storage, though once you have smart contracts, you can start layering other services on top. You have all of these like storage providers who have massive amounts of like hardware, these footprints. You could easily build a hot storage layer that sits on top and just settles into the cold storage layer of Filecoin. And so you can start having trade-offs between like what is the performance that you want and the verifiability that you want of the service, and seamlessly move up and down these like layers. You can even go even further out where it's like I have a retrieval network where it's like super hot cached, and the thing that I'm looking for is like very, very low latency. And so you can really build a service that goes up and down the spectrum of like what sort of verifiability guarantees do you want, as well as like what sort of performance. The reason this becomes interesting is when you're doing things through these like incentivized networks, you get the aggregation of the hardware of like many different providers. It's not like you're single sourcing it from one specific company who eventually will then jack up the bandwidth rates and like make it really expensive for you to run your application. When you're doing it on these open interfaces, you can work with a single or even multiple storage providers, but if you need to port to another one in the future, or for some reason it makes sense to move into specific geographies, you're not re-architecting your app. Everything is still content addressing. You're just changing like some parameters maybe in your smart contract and how things are distributed to move it to whatever regions make sense.
Yeah, and talking about as well that at the moment, a lot of the value is moving out of Web3 and going into some of these large centralized storage providers like Amazon and S3. And so it's quite interesting that for certain classes of storage, we'll be able to keep that like value within the Web3 economy, I think, which has I think a lot of value as well to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting just thinking of like Filecoin as like one island economy, Ethereum is another island economy, Solana is another island economy. And like the thing that we are able to do now is just like have more trade between these economies. Like we have a real service that we can offer. Those economies have their own DeFi ecosystems. You look at like Ethereum with like the real world assets and MakerDAO, and like there's opportunities to build things that span both chains to say like, if I would like to use Ethereum's DeFi to fund my storage or my like applications in Filecoin, once you have a cross-chain bridge, it's just about sending a message and like moving funds. But it's really just saying like we can actually like use the power of Web3's native like economies to support each other.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I guess like maybe to sort of like dovetail off of that. So like we talked a little bit about some of the other services that are coming online with retrieval and compute. And I'm curious how you see like as Filecoin incrementally adds more and more, how that sort of helps evolve Web3 overall.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the analogies is with like the open source world, right? And open source has enabled so many other services to be built, much more frictionlessly on top of other services. And I see, Filecoin allowing a similar kind of thing, especially now with the FVM, that you can build on top of it permissionlessly and build a lot on top there. So I think that's an area that's certainly gonna sort of show up there. And as well as looking at things like gaming and metaverses as well, right? The idea that you can actually have these economies within, say, games, within metaverses, actually sort of self-fund their own storage of assets, I think is really interesting. So taking an example like Gala Games and, actually the tokens within there, as well as being used to like fund items within the game, can actually then be used to actually fund the storage itself, right? I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the things I think that's kind of interesting is like, so when people think of Web3, there's like a very narrow set of things that even outside of this community, if you like go to just an average conference, it'll be like, there's like a DeFi track, there's an NFT track, there's like, I don't know, like maybe gaming is another one, but like it's like a pretty limited set. And I think when we think about like how do we do category expansion of like who is a Web3 developer, once we start unlocking like storage, retrieval, compute, these are just generic services that people use on the web. So we were talking about like open science as another one where like this is separate from like I think there's like a lot of like philosophical alignment between the open science community and like Web3 and the values that we have. But I think it's like we actually can solve some of the real problems that they do have, given like science data is massive. Like, I think NASA had an RFC like that closed on Tuesday or last Tuesday for storing an exabyte of their data and then figuring out how to build open science tooling on top. Like, there is no other way of doing that outside of the cloud today other than Filecoin, which is like kind of crazy if we think about like this is the opportunity to say like when we think about like how do we actually support humanity's information, how do we help like compound the tooling that science has, we can have verifiability and reproducibility of results if we have content hashes. We can keep costs low if it's literally like the marginal provider for storing that data. If universities can also host copies locally and use like pinning an IPFS and seamlessly moving between IPFS and Filecoin.
And a lot of that data, legally has to be public as well. I was talking to a hardware storage vendor earlier, and they were talking about, some of their clients, these big universities, buying, trucks full of hard drives for storage, but they're actually mandated by law to make a lot of this data publicly available. So yes, they've got like the storage, but they don't have the ability to really make it available and distribute it. And I think that's a key area within DeSci and within Filecoin. And again, as you touched about, it's the verifiability, right? So if you think about, you get a scientific paper and they might outline the process they went through. They may even link to like the algorithms they've run. They might link to, say, a GitHub repository with the actual code in that they've run. But quite often they don't have a link to the data, the inputs that they've put in to come up with the results they've come up with. And that's normally because the data is just so large. So to be able to store it on Filecoin and then have a CID, a content ID that's verifiable, you know that the data that you're ingesting and running into that algorithm is the exact same data that was ingested and run into the algorithm when the paper was written. And that's a huge thing to be able to do.
Definitely. Do you want to take some questions? Or?
Yeah. So question here. Another question we've got is, there's a few more that's just come in. How can Web 2 companies benefit from FVM? What do you think about that?
I guess it depends on the Web 2 company.
Exactly.
I think so one of the things that's really cool is I think Filecoin just gives a lot of flexibility in what people, or the FVM specifically, around what people will build. So if you are a data center company in Web 2, I think hopefully this reduces the barrier to entry if you are trying to build a Filecoin storage provider business. Once you have capital markets, it's not even the case that you have to necessarily go out and buy a ton of Filecoin. There will be DeFi protocols that you can tap to be able to permissionlessly get access to capital in order to grow your business. When you think of different types of services, if you are a business that is in charge of storing sensitive assets, so some folks have to keep records of data for some period of time, you could have a smart contract that shows a verifiable audit trail where you don't have to take on the liability. There's actually a team that's sort of doing this with NFTs, where they're a shipping company, or they're they have NFTs that are of the bill of lading, and they're required to keep the data around for 10 years. It's cool. Once you have verifiable proofs and you have smart contracts, you can actually just automate that process where you don't have to be the single point of failure, holding onto this data and hoping that nothing goes wrong. You can have an audit trail where it shows that this data was always persisted in whatever way it was necessary.
Yeah, exactly, and it could be a blended approach to the storage as well. So we're going to no doubt start to see these intermediate layers that will start. I mean, I know that I think there's one already out there that offers an S3 compatible API that is backed up in the end by IPFS, right? And so doing a similar thing with Filecoin, you'd be able to move your storage from, say, the centralized existing providers over. So even if the rest of your stack is very kind of Web 2-ish, you could still take advantage of the storage, especially for, you say, cold storage kind of in the background there. There's a question here, sort of going into some more technical ones, about is there a collection of snippets of code around FVM that people can use and copy and paste from? Well, there's a project we've got, the Hard Hat Starter Kit, and so if you Google FVM Hard Hat Starter Kit, you'll probably get it. Created by my colleague Zach. And I think Sarah might have shown it in the previous talk. So if you go there, there's some examples there as well. And there's also a awesome FVM repository as well that has a link to a whole bunch of stuff in there as well. So you can find some other bits and pieces in there. So yeah, compare and contrast Bacalhau and FVM. Both promise compute over data, right?
So the FVM, I think the better way of thinking of it is compute over state. So on the Filecoin blockchain, you have a state of storage providers are posting proofs, you can see like who is actually submitting those. You can see like who's getting slashed. It gives you information about like the state of the world. Bacalhau is saying like, how do I do computation over data? So not the things that are on the blockchain necessarily, but like all the stuff that's stored on the Filecoin network, so the storage providers, that is being verified on chain. So as an example, it would be the difference between saying like, is my climate data set healthy? If not, replicate, that's an FVM problem, versus I would like to run a transformation to say like, what is the latitude and longitude of the cities that like had a rainfall of more than whatever? And that's like a Bacalhau problem.
And those two are, there's a project that the Bacalhau team have created called Project Lilypad. It was originally called Project Frog. You might see some references to that, but it's now called Project Lilypad. And that is a combination of FVM and Bacalhau. So in that particular case, they're actually using, and Molly talked about this earlier, they're actually running the stable diffusion machine learning algorithm on Bacalhau. So you can give it a text prompt and it'll give you an image back. But they're then orchestrating that using smart contracts on FVM. And eventually they're looking at doing things like payment via FVM. So you could use the smart contracts to deal with, holding collateral whilst the job is being run and then releasing the collateral on proof that the job has been run, for example. So that's quite an interesting one. I'm not sure how we're doing for time, actually. We've got one more? Okay. Let's see here. Okay, the FVM lets us build a bunch of DeFi solutions to be built on Filecoin. Do you expect a high growth in interest from the average DeFi Ethereum user in the Filecoin ecosystem?
I think that's like a maybe. So here's, I think, the reasons why yes, and then maybe the reasons why no. The reasons why yes is like, I think unlike other ecosystems, Filecoin has like an economic loop that's not just like there is like a real thing. Like storage providers need capital. There's like thousands of businesses anchored to the Filecoin network who are looking for capital. So if you are a DeFi builder, there's a lot of opportunities there. I think equally though, there's other things that maybe are like trade-offs. And I would also say things like data DAOs will look probably more like pension funds. They're just giant standing pools of capital funding data sets. Those will be natural consumers of DeFi as well. So like if you are a DeFi builder, the fact that we have this orthogonal capital flow loop that's tied to these services that are being rendered should hopefully be exciting to you. I think the reasons why it's probably going to be different from what people expect in Ethereum is like Filecoin has a block time of like 30 seconds. So I think like the experience and the UX of like building DeFi is going to look probably pretty different from what people normally are thinking of. But it's really going to be, what I imagine at least, is like around what are the services that people are procuring on the network and how do you build financialization around that to unlock capital efficiency.
Yeah, and the FVM allows you to then build additional like layer 2s on top of the Filecoin blockchain. So in the same way that you've got layer 2s on Ethereum, you could build those on top using FVM as well. So you might have a layer 2 that's specifically focused on privacy or particularly focused on performance or zero knowledge proofs or something like that. So I think that's quite a bit. I think we're coming up to, we're out of time now. But thank you very much, everybody. And thanks a lot, JV. It was great chatting.
Thanks, guys.
Great, thank you so much. Please give a big round of applause, please, one more time to Matt and JV. Big round of applause. So you heard earlier, we have a ton of projects building on the FVM. It's an incredibly active space. We even have venture-funded projects before we even have a mainnet launch, which is completely wild. So to have kind of the perspective or insights into how we built that movement or how sort of people are kind of taking advantage of the early resources provided by Protocol Labs and the Filecoin and FVM teams, we're going to have Nikki come up and talk about the Early Builders Program. So give it up, please, for Nikki.
Testing. Hello. Okay, it's working now. Hi, everyone. I'm here to talk about all the amazing things that we have done for all the early builders, some of whom are present over here, for FVM. So since the first testnet launched in November 2022, we have engaged over 1,600 developers, builders, and deployed $430,000 in incentives across a host of different initiatives. We have done 4 hackathons, approved over 20 microgrants, and we received 100+ applications for it. We have done a community bug hunt to make Filecoin Virtual Machine secure. And there's a builders leaderboard that Corey here has led. And there's one more quadratic voting based round going on to award winners, projects that are on top of that leaderboard. One of the hackathons that I want to highlight is the FVM Space Warp Hackathon that we recently wrapped up. That was our biggest hackathon till date, which we did with ETH Global. It had over 1,040 hackers, 280 odd project submissions, and all the sponsor bounties put together, we awarded $150,000 in prizes. I overdid QR codes, so you may want to keep your phone handy if you want to sign up for more updates on other programming and initiatives that we will be doing going forward. Huge shout out to Sarah. She's somewhere here. She has been leading the FVM Early Builder Program since its launch. And the last cohort has been the biggest one yet, with 176 project teams building a host of different projects across infra and tooling, data DAOs, storage applications, DeFi, and other stuff. These teams met every week, showcased their project, talked about problems they were facing. There was a lot of mentoring that they received. And 55 of these are moving to the mainnet cohort, which I'm going to talk about in my next slide. So thank you to all of these amazing builders. We love you guys, and they have gone on to being mere ideas to actually mentors and judges at some of our hackathon projects, and gone from like 1 and 2 people teams to bigger teams, and are really excited to continue the journey and be on mainnet when we launch. If you have an idea that you think is worthy to be in the Filecoin ecosystem, sign up for the next mainnet cohort, deploy to mainnet. It'll be a 4-week program with next generation value generating dApps and solutions with FVM, and 4 weeks up until April 14 to ship. And the format will be similar. There'll be weekly check-ins. The FVM core team will be available to help solve any problems you run into, ideate, bounce off ideas with. And if you're looking for inspiration, check out the request for startups, rfs.fvm.dev. And we are very talkative on Slack. Find us on Phil Builders, and we'll be happy to help with any questions you all have. Thank you for all the awesome energy and ideas that you all have worked on, everyone here and online. And we will continue this programming, and there will be more initiatives coming up in the coming few months. Right now, there are $35,000 in bounties at the Bidlathon at ETH Denver. So if you're hacking at ETH Denver, be sure to check out the bounties. There's the next wave of microgrant applications are open right now. We will have prizes at the 2 other upcoming hackathons in the next 2 months, at ETH Tokyo in person in Tokyo, and Scaling Ethereum, which is virtual. And accelerator program, this QR code takes you to the accelerator program waitlist. So you're going to hear more about it later today, and be sure to learn more about them. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So up next, we have Robert Dowling, who will come up here in just a moment in a fantastic sweater. Looks incredibly cozy. And he'll be giving some perspective on the Global Orbit FVM Open Hack Days. So give it up for Robert.
Yeah. How does this, okay. I'm being told green is forward, so. Okay. Cool. All right. Hello, everyone. My name's Robert. I'm a program manager from the Filecoin Foundation, and I work on the Global Orbit Community Program, which is a group of 80+ ambassadors in just as many countries all over the world, hosting events, building on Filecoin and FVM, and creating educational content on behalf of Filecoin and all of the technologies that Protocol Labs and the Filecoin Foundation builds. Since launch, we've hosted over 140 events, and through October of this year, we'll host another 140 events. The Orbit activities, this is what Orbit ambassadors do. So they're hosting hackathons, including one you'll hear about today, all about FVM. They're hosting community meetups. They're translating documentation, writing educational content. And for this, we are super grateful to all of our Orbit ambassadors all around the world. We had a special collaboration with the Filecoin Virtual Machine team. Thank you, Sarah Tiem in particular, for putting together the event in a box, which was one event that, basically one event and all of its content that basically a dozen Orbit members then replicated all around the world in 30 plus cities. And so we were able to host effectively from that one event in a box 20 meetups, which were 3-hour-long workshops to get the attendees' developer environment for FVM set up and have them launch their first contract on FVM testnet. And then we hosted 10 hackathons, and then we're in the middle of a India-wide 100 university workshop roadshow that will go through the beginning of next year, 20 events per quarter, and that's been really, really amazing to see. In fact, Nikki, who was just here before, gave a great presentation at IIT, the top university in India. Okay, we have a video. I don't know who has the computer to press play. This is a recap of one of our meetups in Korea.
Secure Finance as a strategic partner with Filecoin Foundation Orbit program, and I, as a Filecoin Orbit ambassador, we are super happy to host the FVM meetup in Korea in January 2023. Today, we gathered more than 40 attendees in Seoul to discuss the potential use case of FVM. We invited Filecoin developers, storage providers, and the blockchain engineer to discuss the FVM and the potential use case of FVM, including potential storage, data DAOs, and the lending pools or financial solution for Filecoin.
FVM에 확실히 좀 적응이 된다면 엔지니어로서도 좀 많이 편해질 것 같긴 합니다. 확실히 이런 식으로 또 하면은 많은 스토리지 발견들이 좀 생기겠고 여러 채굴자들이 생기겠구나 약간 싶었습니다.
FVM이 어떻게 가동이 되고 FVM이 실현됐을 때 어떤 세상이 열릴 건지에 대한 부분을 좀 더 구체화할 수 있는 시간이었던 것 같아요. 우리 스토리지 프로바이더에게 큰 힘이 될 수 있을 것 같다는 기대감을 가졌습니다.
Thank you so much to Timo and Secured Finance, our great partners in East Asia. Okay. Okay. I don't know what's going on here, but more or less from the 10 events that we hosted around the world, the 10 hackathons, we called these FVM Open Hack Days. These were events modeled after the FVM Open Hack Day in Lisbon. We love the concept so much that we wanted to do it again in multiple different cities. Over the past 2 weeks, we had more or less 10 hosts hosting these events, and the attendees of these events submitted projects, many of them amazing, and I actually sat with Nikki and Jenks and Sarah and the rest of the hackathons team last night. We judged the projects, and we are now going to announce the winners. So I know from streaming, we have many of our Orbit members and the attendees actually waiting. So we're holding them in suspense. So I think I'll just go ahead and announce the winners here. So third place for $1,000, Vertex Finance out of Lagos, Nigeria, who built the market making and staking tool on FVM. Second place for $2,000, Wrapped Phil. This is a project out of Shenzhen, China. And finally, a use case I think is so important and very consequential. In first place, for $3,000, online voting machine on the Filecoin Virtual Machine, a team out of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Thank you so much to the Orbit community, and thank you for all the builders who contributed their projects. If you're interested in applying for Orbit, here's the QR code. You can take out your phones and, yeah, there we go. Okay, great. And you can learn more about Orbit here. We have one last video. If we could play that. Yeah, James? Oh, amazing. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great, thanks so much, Robert. And then now we're going to switch into our builder showcase, where we're going to be, say again, speed it up. Oh, we have more time? Say it again, sorry. We're ahead of schedule. So should we just take okay, we'll keep going. We'll keep going. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is a showcase where we're showing you what builders are actually doing with FVM. We heard a couple of use cases being discussed already, and now we're so grateful to have a couple of people who are actually here in Denver, and we have a few more that are joining via, with videos, pre-recorded videos, to show what is possible. So we'll hear today from, I think, 17 builders. If you could pull up the slide exactly, you'll hear from 17 builders, the couple of logos here, and they'll tell you what they're doing. One thing to just help you, organize these 7 teams a bit is that these use cases that you'll hear about today, you can kind of loosely group them into 5 opportunity areas, each with unique potential for developers, storage providers, and other participants of the Filecoin network. So we'll have these teams kind of funnel into these use cases. I'll briefly, as we kind of go through these pitches, discuss each. So we have data onboarding and data management tools. We'll have discovery and reputation services for storage providers and other network participants. We'll have DeFi as a big opportunity, and then data curation and monetization, so all the great things that you've heard around data DAOs, and then finally integration and other services. We'll double click into each of these. I'll start with kind of the data onboarding and management tools. The frictions that this really addressed is it reduces the complexity of making storage deals on the Filecoin network, and it increases the speed at which client data can be onboarded to the network. Couple of use cases that we think will happen here is obviously the deal-making tools, but then also repair and replication workers for data. Things like discounting tools where you bundle multiple storage deals in one and get them at a better rate. Perpetual storage, and then also things like sealing as a service and access control solutions. The reason why I think this is exciting now and for Web3 is that today, these centralized cloud providers often moat their businesses with these economies of scale and lock-in effects, which keeps prices artificially high and impedes innovation. And as Web3 kind of commoditizes the core tenets of the data economy, so storage, compute and retrieval, with tools like these, we'll see a lot more kind of innovation happen, prices come down, and just more people having access to the data economy. So I'll hand it over to Guru, who is the founder of Third Storage, to tell us a bit about what they're doing. And here's the mic. Thanks.
Hi all, I'm Guru and I'm the founder of Third Storage. So we believe that the two biggest barriers in Web3 adoption are developer experience and user experience. So most of the so-called dApps, they end up using centralized databases and other segments to overcome these problems. They use centralized databases to overcome microtransactions, and they use Web2 indexes, centralized access controls, and backups. So Third Storage is a decentralized and privacy-preserving Web3 alternative to Firebase, which is a developer tooling to help Web3 developers ship out apps quickly. So to get started, you can create your own instance of Third Storage by using our CLI. You can just go to your terminal, hit npx Third Storage at latest, and have your terminal up and running. And we also have a Third Storage SDK, which you can use to communicate with your Third Storage instance. So I have a quick demo of how Third Storage works. So you can start a Third Storage instance and copy the project URL and paste it in your SDK. So once that's done, you can go to your client application, where I have an example application here, and you can authenticate your users. So we have sign-in with Ethereum integrated. So anyone can sign in into your app, and you can see that the particular user is signed in. So coming back to our graphical user interface, you can see that we now have one user. And you can see that we have no data types right now. But going into the public data, we have a CID pertaining to that specific user. So coming back, let's now try adding a key and value pair into the data. So we are adding name as Bob and saving it as a public data. Now going back to our users pane, you can see that we now have a public data. So now to make it even more complex, let's try adding a private data. So it's password, where we have a very strong password. And we are trying to save it as a private data. So we use lit protocols, threshold cryptography, to make sure we have the private data access control. So now coming back, you can see that we have a private data type. And you can only view the public data associated with the user, not the private data. This way, we make sure that the user and the data are co-aligned, and the data is owned by the user. So all the data is stored in Filecoin and is orchestrated by Filecoin Virtual Machine. So you can get started by going to our website, thirdstorage.com, or you can also check out the developer documentation at docs.thirdstorage. Here's my quick contact if you're looking to deliver some feedback, and here's a QR code to check out our Twitter handle. Thank you.
Hello. Hey everyone, I'm Nandit. I'm the founder of Lighthouse. And at Lighthouse, we're building perpetual storage on Filecoin, allowing you to store your files forever with just one-time payment. And we believe that there are 4 key properties that are required to make the Web3 storage experience seamless. The number 1 is persistence, that you can store your files long-term and have minimum replications that you require. The second thing is fast speed, that you can retrieve even something like 4K videos that is possible using Lighthouse Stack. The third is tamper-proof and distributed nature that we get from using IPFS and Filecoin underneath. And the fourth thing is privacy, which our encryption and access control SDK enables, allowing you to store private data and even build token-gated applications. And underlying, we have this thing called as growth endowment pool, which is multi-chain and accrues fees through various GFI protocols and make sure that your files are stored till perpetuity. And unlike Arweave, our focus is to get the user experience better for the end developers. We have verifiable data guarantees that every miner submits this proof of space-time every 24 hours. And the price range is also cheaper than Arweave's permanent storage. And as per our suite, we have 4 different offerings. First one is the SDK for developers to use in their browser front-end or back-end in Node.js. And the second is the Lighthouse Files app, which is more like a Dropbox interface for the end users. Third is our SDK for encryption and access control. And fourth is our CLI tool. And there are a variety of applications possible, like users can store NFT data, DAO data, you can build time-locked retrieval, deadman switch, all of those can be done through Lighthouse. And to discuss some of the use case, so for example, OK Contract team built an NFT widget that you can embed on any Web2 site without writing a single line of code, and underlying they use Lighthouse. And the beauty of this integration is that every OK Contract owner gets their own unique Lighthouse account rather than a single API key of OK Contract team. So even if OK Contract team goes away, you still have your data on Lighthouse. The second is our integration with Ocean Protocol, that now every Ocean dApp and developers can store their data and NFT marketplace data on Lighthouse. So that is, I think, a very interesting use case which is already live. And third is with Syscoin, with this data availability service. And if this is done in coming months, we'll see other blockchain data also migrating to Filecoin using Lighthouse. And yeah, FVM is coming and we are ready. And we have defined these 8 stages of launch, from like day 1 of encryption and access control support to the Filecoin Lighthouse Files app, mainnet support, followed by on-chain pushing of client data, miner data, and then stage 5 of automatic deal renewal, governance, connection to DeFi in the 7th stage, and then finally rewarding the community and public good funding for the Lighthouse development. Thank you.
Oh, nice. Is this Glyph? Am I in the right order? Not me?
No, it might be you. I'm just like doing the transition here, okay? So this was, some of the tools that we're seeing in the storage management and getting data onto the network, keeping it there. The next kind of opportunity area is this, what we're calling discovery and reputation services for storage providers and other network participants. The frictions addressed here is that today the providers and the network participants have a hard time differentiating, specializing, and being discoverable by the people that might want to, access their services. And if we get this right, so if these discovery and reputation services exist, storage clients can make choices around which storage providers to store their data with just greater confidence and greater optionality. So the things that will make this happen are things like trustless reputation systems, quality of service portals, retrievability oracles, block explorers, naming services, and that's kind of like the category of things that fits in this bucket. So today, a large number of providers that exist on the storage network, might be able to cater to a very specific niche market segment with greater competitiveness and really unlock new markets. Think offering storage provider services in a specific jurisdiction or compliant with certain requirements like HIPAA or GDPR, right? These kinds of services around discovery and reputation will help you to verify those kinds of claims and allow storage providers and other network participants to signal compliance with those regulations, both off and on chain, which give them a unique advantage in kind of the Web3 space. Cool, and we'll hear from a couple of teams in this opportunity area next. I'll hand it over to Prashant. Thanks so much. And that's your clicker.
Hey, hi everyone, and good afternoon, GM as well. I'm Prashant. I'm building Spheron Network. It is one of the decentralized infra aggregation tool which we are building. But I'm not here to present Spheron. I'm here to present Filecoin naming services which we have built over the time. Before I get started, how many of you are excited about owning your own .fil name? Most of you? Okay. So this is for you guys. So today what we are going to be presenting is why we are best fit for building this. We are 22 team members strong team who is building into the ecosystem for a very longer time now. So we feel like we are best fit for building this thing, which we are launching from Spheron Foundation directly. Coming to our product objective, what we are kind of looking forward, we are looking to basically provide unique naming services on top of FIL once it goes live during the mainnet. What does that mean? That basically means all the wallets, all the websites, all the data DAOs who are building into the space can basically use FIL services, Filecoin naming services, which we are providing to basically resolve it at the runtime itself. Coming to like how exactly we are trying to solve it, we completely migrated ENS to FNS directly, and then we made a lot of modification around it to make sure all the functionalities which you receive on the ENS side in the Ethereum ecosystem, you get the same experience and the feel in FNS ecosystem as well. And this is we achieved with the smart naming registry. This is high-level architecture. I know it is not that great to look into, but we have created it in a very short span of a time. It basically showcases like how the name gets resolved and how your 0x domain or your 0x addresses are going to be turned into nice web application, nice NFTs, nice whatever. You can basically build a lot of things around it. Okay, coming to what we have developed so far, these all things are developed. So if you are in testnet, we are currently in testnet. If you want to own your NFT or file name, you can go to FNS site today and start launching, because we will be migrating around 1,000 names once we go to the mainnet. So make sure you claim yours once that happens. We already have FNS library as well created, what basically it means. It basically means like the DApps which are getting built now can basically go and access and do a lot of things around it. Recpro.fil.dev is a resolution proxy which we have created, so you can resolve your website from today onward. These are the couple of things which we are looking for next steps to launch. App revamp, launching DAO and marketplace SDKs. There are a lot of things which we are kind of building. And if you are looking to basically participate with us, feel free to join our Discord. We'll be more than happy to help you in launching your next FIL-based domain directly from Spheron. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, this is the video which came up now. So this is how exactly it looks like. So you can go to fns.site, go and claim your name. As of now, it is done as fast as we can, but we'll make sure we optimize it as we go. Within next month, you will find much more improved version of it. So this is how you can go and register your name now. Yeah. So this name is already registered, so you guys can also go ahead and start registering your name today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'll definitely register my full domain. Oh, we got John next. I'll just pass on the microphone right away. Thanks so much, John.
Thanks very much. So here's another FNS proposal. I'm John from Filefox, and I should say that's Filefox, not Firefox Mozilla, which in all this noise, people hear it that way sometime. So let's talk about this, Filefox and FNS. The Filefox team has been successful in the recent hackathons with this FNS architecture and this approach. What it is our way of using the FVM to provide blockchain as a service with decentralized identity. And here's a diagram that you can't possibly read in the time we're allocated, but I'll just run through it. With the FVM, we're using 721 NFTs. The Web3 user here can go onto our site, fns.space, to search, register, resolve various names for their identity and content. And then there's also a proof of social media that can be integrated into the profile. And so this is the basic architecture. And the recent updates that we've been doing, improving the UI UX, release of version 2. Filefox Hyperspace lets you look up FNS names and search and see how that's working. And what we're announcing is an FNS DAO, because we'd like to have a big tent with all the FNS activities in it so that everyone can participate. So what we're going to do is open source our content. We haven't done that yet, otherwise I'd give you the GitHub repository and open up our development to the community. So this is what the DAO will look like. And the basic structure, about 24 participants that will share registry fees and also make the decisions about upgrades, tests, process for the development. Our socials are open. You can reach us at fnsspace or contact@filefox.io. And thanks very much.
Thank you so much, John. And I think I'm just passing the mic to Ranveer. Thanks so much.
Hi everyone, I'm Ranveer Rana from Witness Chain. Today I'll be presenting our system for decentralized speed test, which is enabled by our proof of backhaul. A little bit about our team. Our objective is to develop proofs for decentralized infrastructure. Our team consists of researchers and developers from the area of blockchains, wireless networks, and cloud computing. So let me give you a brief overview of how speed tests are performed in the current setup. So what you have are centralized speed tests. The centralized speed tests, all of you might have used. It's like Ookla or anything like that. They maintain very expensive, high-performance servers in all geographical locations. Now, what if you can replace that expensive servers with a lot of small, low-power servers running on decentralized compute platforms such as Filecoin Station? What you can do is now you can combine multiple low-throughput servers and aggregate that data and perform the speed tests. Now, the main innovation here lies in the fact that you don't need to trust any of those decentralized compute servers. And that's enabled by our proof of backhaul. Once you have a proof that you have a certain bandwidth available at your node, you can perform a lot of applications. So that proof is available on FVM, and you can enable other contracts that extract data from that proof. You can incentivize station nodes with high provable bandwidth. You can integrate this service for internet service providers. And you can also tokenize network and use those tokens for DeFi protocols, sell futures and derivatives. Going over a brief architecture of proof of bandwidth, you have a peer who pays to run the speed test. The speed test is run on a prover who is claiming a certain bandwidth, and it is run by a set of challengers which is randomly selected. Those challengers run those tests and then post it on our network proof contract, from which any FVM contract can do a lookup and get to know the reputation, network reputation of a particular prover. Now, one thing I would like you to notice is that the proof of backhaul challengers are a perfect fit for decentralized compute. They're very simple compute jobs. They don't require any orchestration, and they don't require verifiable computing because we have redundancy or resilience built in within our proof of backhaul. So we'll go through a brief demo. Let's go ahead. So this is the Explorer in which you can see the set of online nodes. You can start a challenge, pay for it using Filecoin. And once the challenge is started, it will spawn a random set of challengers. These are like selected 4 challengers. It will run a test for less than a second and produce these results. These results will then be posted on the blockchain, from which we gather this data, and it shows that this prover has a bandwidth of 100 Mbps. This can be used by other FVM contracts in the future if needed. All right, thank you for going through our presentation. You can reach out to me on my Telegram, or you can look at our website and our publications. I would like to reach out especially to decentralized compute platforms who require demand for compute jobs, and also to anyone who needs network telemetry for their network. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ranveer. Cool. That concludes the opportunity area around discovery and analytics, and I hope you can kind of see how things like these will really make the network, will make it easier for people to use the network with greater confidence. Cool. The next opportunity area that I'd like to double click into is DeFi. The frictions addressed here is just, we heard about this before, but just making it much easier to access collateral for storage providers, which allows them to onboard data faster and more easily. And it also gives the token holders on the other side more opportunities to participate in the Filecoin economy. So really matching the demand for capital and the supply for capital and turning that into win-win is like what DeFi can do here. You know, the potential use cases obviously is this matchmaking of people who have Filecoin and want to put it to good use, and those that need Filecoin to onboard data and use it for collateral. I think this is super exciting because today the providers on the Filecoin network have collectively locked up 130 million Filecoin, right? So at the current price, I think that's about $1 billion in capital that's looking to be invested, and it could be much more. A relatively small share of all the Filecoin circulating supply are staked compared to other networks and other blockchains, and DeFi allows really for that to change and for massive innovation around where we'll see the best models for storage providers to onboard more data and much more modularity. Cool. I'd like to welcome to the stage John Wen, who's... Oh, no, sorry, that's wrong. This is just a video, so I'll just play it, and you'll get a sense for what that is. So this is a decentralized storage provider exchange.
Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to present you today our project, Specs. Specs is a decentralized exchange for the storage providers that allows them to transfer their account belongings, such as ID address, beneficiaries, and even computing power in the future, and also enjoying other financial services through the integrated financial marketplace. This will greatly increase the liquidity, interaction, and interoperability in the Filecoin ecosystem. There are two core parts of Specs. The first is the exchange contract that builds the native exchange market, allowing storage providers to exchange and trade their account belongings like ID address and beneficiaries and etc. Additionally, the exchange contract can also serve other developers who need to incorporate exchange functions into their products, saving them time and effort. The second core part is our integrated financial service market. We will partner with other products that provide financial services such as insurance, tax, token swap, and etc. on the Filecoin ecosystem to build an integrated marketplace for storage providers to enjoy a one-stop shop for financial services whenever they need. Furthermore, this market will also help developers increase their product exposure and acquire more users. Why does swapping account belongings matter? We find that there are opportunities such as SPs are unable to transfer their IDs and any other belongings. Also, they need to wait 180 days to unlock their locked rewards, even they are willing to sell with discount now. Abused ID creation is another aspect. We did a little research and find out currently there are 518,000 miner IDs have been built, but only 3,800 are actively used. Only 0.7% usage efficiency. We believe in the future there might be a FIP needed to charge the fee of each node created to prevent abuse of ID creation, allowing recycling IDs to happen. Here comes why our exchange market is demanded. Specs provides the marketplace to allow SPs to sell their accounts with discount to unlock the locked rewards immediately. SPs will be able to buy some special numbers or good reputation IDs, and last, recycling the abused created IDs. Moreover, there are opportunities for developers to discover to incorporate the exchange function that our exchange contracts provide. For example, releasing beneficiaries with terms, time and quota, meeting the financial needs of SPs like ABS, shorting, and the fuel token swap. Even in the future, when the tech is available, the bid market, computing power, and the deal order transferring also can be developed on top of our exchange contract. Last is our integrated financial market. It's still in the progress of developing. So far, we got in touch with some financial service products and discussed collaboration. Let's stay tuned. This is our intro website. This area introduces the problems we solve and how this works, and our social link. For the marketplace, it's not yet fully developed. Only prototype can be presented now. The UI will be designed later for sure. So we can see there are 3 sections on the marketplace page. The transaction flow of seller side is basically you need to transfer in your miner to our contract to be able to exchange on the platform and list the order and receive the payment if trade is made. For the me page, it mainly used to manage the miners you have. In here, you can process changing price, cancel the listed order, and release the unlisted ones. And last, to transfer your miners out from our platform. That's all for the marketplace prototype. Thank you for watching.
Thank you to the specs team. Encourage you to kind of just check out the website and kind of dive in there more. Steven, who is part of the team that's driving this, is actually around. So feel free to just catch him later in the networking session to discuss this. And I have one more video here, but he is here in person too.
Hi everyone, my name is Yue Bo. Today it's my pleasure to present you Phil, a liquidity pool and lending platform designed for Filecoin storage providers. In order to participate in the consensus in the Filecoin network, storage providers need upfront pledge, which is very capital intensive and sometimes even more than hardware itself. Phil would enable a low-cost borrowing by simply transferring the miner's beneficiary address to the smart contract as collateral, which is equivalent of utilizing the vested balance in advance. The interest rate is not fixed or predefined, but determined by the market demand and supply. In our case, the utilization rate. Filecoin holders could deposit Phil to obtain FLE and FRC46 fungible token to earn passive income. Value of FLE increases with loan repayments, as the interest fills back into the liquidity pool along with the principal. A fully automated, decentralized, and algorithm-based smart contract handles the requests, interest rate calculations, and the settlements. Certain mechanisms are designed to attract the Phil deposit when the pool utilization rate is high and to protect the pool from overdraft. The user interface for the basic functions has been implemented. Our website contains some project information and the entrance to the platform. After connected to wallet, Phil holders are able to deposit Phil and receive FLE token or redeem FLE token to withdraw Phil. The exchange rate constantly increases as borrowing interest rate refills into the liquidity pool and plummets when utilization rate is higher than 80%. Storage providers can borrow as much as 2/3 of the authorized beneficiary address threshold. The borrowing interest rate is a monotonically increasing function of the utilization rate and is compounded continuously so that we can borrow and return at any time. Phil Lab consists of experienced public chain developers, finance and economic researchers, and front-end designers. Currently, we are incorporating the borrowing interest rate and Phil FLE exchange rate models into the smart contract and reshaping the concept design. The prototype for testnet will be released during Q2. Team is also actively engaged with the community by attending workshops, check-ins, and hackathons to receive feedbacks and gain exposure. Thank you very much, and feel free to contact us if you have any questions.
Thanks so much to the Phil team. I hope this double click into some of the DeFi solutions gave you a glimpse into how it's both exciting for storage providers as well as token holders, and how FVM unlocks for the first time these much easier opportunities to put your tokens to good use and access tokens for your needs. I'll have a hand over for Lemon for the, I think, final presentation in this DeFi segment.
Hey everyone, how's it going? All right, let's get this party started. We're about to talk about the most exciting asset class that's out there right now, bonds. Hold on. Jackrabbit Finance, ladies and gentlemen, is a decentralized bond exchange that will be launching on the FVM. Now, there we go. All right, so Jackrabbit utilizes bond tokens, newest ERC 3475, to make tokenized assets available to the public. You can stake, buy, or sell these bond tokens on Jackrabbit's exchange. Now, we will also be running our own series of liquidity pools and will be that will back the bond market. Now, what is the EIP 3475? Okay, abstract storage bonds. It's a very new concept, all right? So it allows for the creation of tokenized obligations with abstract on-chain metadata storage. Now, with that, bonds can be created with this EIP and can also be batched for issuance and redemption conditions, gas efficiency, as well as be put on and sold on secondary marketplaces. Now, bonds on the FVM. Now, what we're looking at here is an asset class where, with these provable storage bonds, you have equity, debt instruments, commodities and futures, OTC derivatives, carbon credit, green bonds. The list goes on. Now, provable tokenized debt obligations, that's what these are. And another use case for them as well, which can be used on our exchange, is DAO management. And it ultimately opens up these entire asset classes to the public, and you're allowed to put on a secondary marketplace. Now, in terms of, for the most part, the life cycle of these bonds, all right, they're issued and held on the FVM and ultimately the Filecoin network as well. All right, so the bond issuer will then make it available to basically whoever, so within the general public. And then ultimately the investor stakes or buys and can end up selling it on a secondary marketplace. And then it is redeemed back onto Jackrabbit's exchange. Now, we've gone ahead and partnered with Desmo Labs, the creator of this bond standard that was introduced to the Ethereum Foundation, as well as the Seller Network, which is a bridge that is in essence going to be available and this is for all the builders as well. Seller Network is going to be available for you to bridge over assets to the FVM, all right? All right, so in terms of roadmap, we do plan on launching the DEX itself in mid-April and the bond marketplace soon after that. All right, so, and yes, you can go ahead and just follow us at JRT Finance on Twitter, and we do have a Discord as well, Jackrabbit Finance. And I just want to say to all you guys, thank you very much for coming in. And yeah, can't wait to see you guys. You have a good one.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Lemon. Great energy. I love it. Cool. I'll hand over the mic to Steve, who will tell us about Filet Finance.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Steve from Filet.finance. Oh, sorry. Go this way. So Filet is a decentralized Filecoin staking service with the FVM. But the Filet service was launched 2 years ago. At that time, there was no FVM. So we have our own protocol to make it like 90% decentralized, but not 100%. But with the FVM today, it's 100% decentralized. So you stake a Fi token into Filet to earn more token. That's the best way to participate in the Filecoin ecosystem. If you have Fi tokens, with the tokens and more tokens. By the way, Filet is not a lending, is not a saving, it's a staking. Means your asset is staking on the blockchain. You control the asset, not lending. Lending, you send the money to there and you lose control. It's very dangerous. But staking is 100% safe, because you can withdraw the principal and earning anytime. Here's some highlights. So today, we already have 500,000 Filecoins staking there, TVL, 500,000. It's very big. We are probably the biggest one and the earliest one. And it's open source, and it's audited by 30K. And it has a stable and a secure operator in 2 years, no any problem. And we are operating in Silicon Valley. Even DeFi, human trust is still #1. We know a lot of DeFi projects rug, right? The team run away. So human trust is always #1. We are in Silicon Valley, and you can always find us. Don't worry about that. Yeah. And you can withdraw earning anytime. Let me show a video. It's very simple. You see, with the MetaMask, you stake your Filecoin, and you can see earning, and you can withdraw earning anytime. Very flexible. And the APY, annual APY, is about like 25%. You may be wondering, it's so high. Maybe it's a pounds, but it's true. 25% APY is true. It's on the blockchain. You can check it. It's not again. It's not a saving. It's not a lending. It's a decentralized staking. 25% APY is true. It's trustable. And this is how it works with the FVM. So first of all, we have the flat smart contract, and the Filecoin token holder stake into the smart contract, and the smart contract will select as SP because Flat is an open platform, so any SP can connect to the platform. So it will choose the best SP and staking the Fi token into the SP and generate the Filecoin storage power. And withdraw earning is the reverse way. And again, Flat is open to any SP. Any SP here, if you are interested, talk to me. You can connect to the Flat platform, and you will never worry about the character Filecoin token again anymore. You just get the Filecoin tokens from the token holder. So we are in Silicon Valley, and we are a very large service SP. We have 200 or 300 terabyte storage in Silicon Valley data center. Yeah, and our team has 5 years of blockchain development. We even have our own layer 1 blockchain. So it's a very technical team. It's very trustable. Thank you. If you have a Fi token, stake in there.
Thanks so much, Steve. Definitely check it out. Cool. I'll hand over the mic to Jonathan from Glyph to tell us about pools and more.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. What's up, everyone? I'm going to keep this short. Oh, that looks really bad. But anyways, let's just roll with it. I'm John. This is Glyph. In case you haven't heard of Glyph, we've been around for a few years, helping out with like critical apps and tools, and now protocols for Filecoin. We run a wallet, a multi-sig, an explorer. We run blockchain nodes for Filecoin. And next up, we are going to be releasing a protocol for secure staking on Filecoin, but not just any sort of staking pool. It's actually staking infrastructure for Filecoin. So generally with Filecoin, I'll keep this quick, but there's no one-size-fits-all staking model. Every storage provider is unique in how they operate, their efficiency, their risk, and so you can't really just have one staking pool that works for the entire network, right? You need to have custom staking pools. For example, you could have a staking pool where storage providers who have gone through an audit with Filecoin Green are the only eligible borrowers. Or you could have a pool that incentivizes retrieval miners who have a really successful retrieval rate to borrow at cheaper cost of capital from a pool. So keep your eyes peeled. We're launching at the end of this month. We're in audit right now. And the first pool that we're launching, planned on March 27th, this is going to be the first, maybe not with Filet. I didn't know this. Filet, very good. But we are going to be launching the first pool, the Genesis pool, completely non-custodial, no multi-sigs, built on the FVM at the end of this month. So keep your eyes peeled. I was going to give you a demo, but I didn't get the opportunity. So follow Glyph on Twitter. We just spun that up. There will be a lot of cool updates and announcements over there, and thank you for the time.
Thanks so much, John. Definitely check it out too, and yeah, I encourage you to check out what all the cool stuff that Glyph is doing around wallets too. It's such a crucial part of our ecosystem. Cool. The next opportunity area that I'd like to double click in, that I'm personally super excited about, is this like data curation and monetization tools, right? So the world that we live in today, the value that's created in the data economy is captured by just a few players, and it disproportionately favors the data aggregators versus the data creators. And these data aggregators are using network effects and other modes to, around these Web2 data sets to prevent a more equitable split of proceeds that they make from this data economies. So the use case that I'm excited for here is just these collectives forming around the curation and curation and creation and monetization of valuable data sets. And you can really picture that across a range of different areas, like think healthcare, consumer financial data, knowledge management, research data. There's a ton of interesting things here where groups could come together to create these data sets and then collectively monetize them. Web3 is uniquely positioned to do this. You cannot do this in Web2, right? So Web3's decentralized ledgers allow for this value attribution in a much more seamless way than any Web2 solution could. It's just too complicated to maintain that without a blockchain. And then with Filecoin and other Web3 services, the data aggregation services will continue to commoditize, right? So storage costs will come down, compute costs will come down, retrieval costs will come down because you have a lot more competition for these kinds of services, which means also, that's at least my thesis, that the value creators, where that data is actually originating from, stand to capture a larger share. So we'll hear next from a couple of teams that kind of fit into this category, and I'll hand over the mic to Charles, who's going to talk about Lagrange.
Hi. Hi everyone, I'm Charles. I'm the founder of the Lagrange DAO. I'm also the founder of First One. So basically, we are doing the data computing over and sharing those data sets of value over the Filecoin network. So this is our team. So I'm the product architecture about the entire workflow. We have Daniel, who is the developer lead, Rishbal from the McGill University doing as the developer dev, and Ricky is smart contract developers. So what we want to do is currently there are lots of data available on the scientific world. It's growing really fast, from petabyte level of storage and growing annually. So we can see there is a huge demand, and those data currently is stored on AWS, Google Cloud, and they are not really fully backed up in different geolocations. And here we are. What we are doing now, we give people the access of the data on the IPFS, and those data will be backed up to the Filecoin network, and you have opportunities to do the revenue sharing of our data value. So we are aligned with the Filecoin master plan about the computing and the CDN sharing. We are the original team working on the Jupyter network computing over the Filecoin. Okay. Sorry, wait to back that one land. So this is the data and the payment flow. So the model and the data set you can upload to the data provider, and the Filecoin Plus give you the access about the verified data. Stored on the data side, you can, as a storage provider, you can provide a bandwidth, computing power, and storage. And the consumer pay for all the services and sharing between the different parties. And this is our technical stack about data workflow. The user will create a workspace, reserve instance on the Filecoin SP's network, and you get the tasks, reputation module, bidding engine to matching everybody in the same place. And the computing provider create lots of computing workers, distributed load and computing needs. And the final URI of the resource will return through the smart contract to the original users. So you can remotely log in to play around with your services, for example, stable diffusions. And we are currently doing the roadmap. We started our work from January 2022. So we finished the data set storage on November. Now we are working on the computing power, and the token launch will be end of the month on FVM smart contract. The community can receive lots of tokens for testing it. Yeah. So we currently call for the participants. So if developers or users who want to use the service can feel free to scan us and join the network.
Thanks so much, Charles. And I'll welcome Karen to the stage next, who will talk us about DLAN.
GM, everyone. Welcome to DLAN, Data as Labor Network, previously known as SpanDAO. We are a data DAO for monetizing credit card transaction data. So why credit card transaction data? Roughly 1 billion credit card transactions are completed per day. Anonymized and aggregated credit card transaction data are extremely valuable in terms of consumer insights and market intelligence. For instance, is there a spike of Netflix subscriptions quarter over quarter? Or are you wondering if there's any dip at hardware stores as the mortgage rate goes up? These can easily be captured in credit card spending data. So credit card spending data is the highest grossing data source in the so-called alternative data market. The market is expected to grow at roughly 54% CAGR and is going to hit roughly $143 billion by 2030. However, we as consumers who generate those credit card spending history and the footprints have little control over how and when our data is being used. Despite fueling multiple billion-dollar industries, the paradox is that the marginal value of one person's data is close to zero, and there are no networks on platforms where we could effectively coordinate and pool our data together. That's why we're building a data DAO. We're building dApps on FVM that facilitate the creation and operation of a data DAO. Let's jump to the demo. So integration with Plaid and storage on IPFS ensures that data is authentic and tamper-proof. The CID of encrypted data is referenced in the soulbound token, which represents DAO membership. In the end-user dashboard, an existing DAO member could easily burn a soulbound token if they wish to exit the DAO. The admin dashboard is token-gated. Only a wallet or multi-sig containing the admin NFT is authorized to unlock the dashboard and decrypt data. Both decryption and payments to data contributors are verifiable on-chain. So this is how we have configured the backend for user onboarding. In particular, we use Tableland to index the metadata of soulbound token and to track the change of DAO membership. So what's on our product roadmap? Zero-knowledge computation is particularly interesting to us because it enables us to assess the quality of data even before they are encrypted and uploaded to IPFS. And then the next question is, how do we make money? Technically as a data aggregator and intermediary, we do not wish to be another gatekeeper of the data we collect. Instead, we're building an open data marketplace with Web3 native tech stack where everyone, including DAO members, could access. Community members are incentivized to acquire the data and acquire the aggregated data and co-create use cases such as investment sub-DAOs. Imagine just a small fraction of the 30 million Wall Street bets degens pulling together their spending data and building algos together for stock investment and trading. So why now? Why we're building data DAO? So there's a reckoning that everyone sitting here and together with billions of users of Web2 applications and services are not just consumers, but data producers. The digital footprints we leave behind and the algos trained with our data are the foundation of prominent business models in Web2. But with Web3 technologies, we're able to easily tokenize off-chain data that we rightfully own, and address challenges in coordination and collective bargaining. So right now we are a full stack team with expertise in product design and engineering. So if anyone is interested in joining our team or partnering, feel free to reach out to us on Discord or Twitter. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karen. Isn't it exciting? Like, it's honestly, this is the stuff that it's like world-changing stuff, right? Like, this could never have been done before. So I'm so excited. Like, please check this. And also imagine like the other stuff, right? AI training model data. This, consumer credit data is an interesting thing and it has a real market, but there's so much more stuff there. So super exciting. Ning, I'll hand over to you for the next pitch.
All right, thank you. Hello, sorry. Hello, I'm Ning. So I will give you an overview of Project Shield. So Shield protocol is about to build a decentralized AI training platform to provide the AI training service. And if we see some challenge, if we look at the current, the cutting-edge deep learning models like the GPT-3, Stable Diffusion, they are getting larger and larger, and they require hundreds to thousands of GPUs to work together to train or fine-tune. So they care about the performance or the dollar efficiency very much. So imagine if we create another service that doubles the price or they just doubles the training time, there would be no reason for them to switch. So that is being said, like the AI industry has spent years to building amazing softwares and the best practice for the distributed AI training. So best case is if we want to keep the users still using their existing code or software without modifications. And so the Shield protocol did the trade-off to not add any verifications to the model computing itself, because that will create actual overhead, very large. For example, if we run the zero knowledge proof against the model compute, so there will be super slow, and we will expose some limitations like we cannot effectively use FP32. The current the AI training market is manipulated by few cloud providers, centralized providers like the GCP or AWS. Currently, users just come to this service and request a training environment, which include the accelerators, the local storage in a local network. And the user will need to upload their data set to the environment through internet. So the Shield protocol is a decentralized exchange of the platform where anybody with the right hardware can be a provider, can provide such an environment. And so this will lower the bar to the market and make the market more saturated, so lower the price. So to make this happen, we have to think about the providers could come from anywhere of the world. So we cannot let users upload their data set anymore through internet. So we take this into consideration. We have to let the provider to prove they already has the data set and pre-mounted in the local network. So this is a diagram of the design on the FVM. So our plan is to launch the first implementation on the Filecoin mainnet. This is a screenshot of the proof of concept demo in the test net. Yeah. So if you want to contact, these are the links. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. So cool. I said AI training data, and then the next project was about AI training data. So cool. Awesome. The final category of opportunity for teams building is this kind of integration and other services. So the friction that's addressed here is the ability to export and import services out of and into the Filecoin economy. JV was talking about this a little bit earlier. Today that's a complex process, and hopefully FVM will make that easier by having things like cross-chain bridges, NFT standards, maybe that have built-in storage guarantees, voting tools, trustless fill-pass notaries, and just all the things that, maybe also connect to Bacalhau and just integrate Filecoin more closely with the Web3 ecosystem and other projects. So why this matters is that today many L1 and layer 2 ecosystems in Web3 have successfully demonstrated utility for certain communities, right? NFT collectors or in DeFi, and these ecosystems would benefit from the exports that the Filecoin economy can give them if we're staying in this island economy analogy. So really opportunities here for Web3 to become more closely integrated and supercharge what they're doing with the powers of Filecoin. I'll hand over to Jonathan from Midpoint to discuss Midpoint.
I'm Jonathan from Midpoint. Midpoint is a platform that allows developers to very easily configure and deploy oracles, data bridges, notifications, and tons of other pieces of off-chain infrastructure on EVM chains. So we built Midpoint because the process of setting these pieces of infrastructure up now is slow and cumbersome, and the actual act of hosting those nodes isn't fun to do. So what Midpoint actually is a series of atomic components known as sources and tasks, each of which listen for a particular thing to happen or take some corresponding action. By chaining these sources and tasks together, you can build tons of different kinds of off-chain workflows, including oracles, bridges, price feeds, and stuff like that. So as an example, if I was to build a Midpoint that listens for a particular event to be emitted, makes an HTTP request, and then posts the response back on chain, I've built an oracle. And the beauty of Midpoint is that all these different pieces of infrastructure are nothing more than a simple JSON file for each of these components and a path that links them together. And I'm going to show a quick demo of that here.
We're going to build an oracle that gets Filecoin minor recognition. With one command, we can initialize all the files needed to define our oracle. We start with a start point. This tells our Midpoint to listen for requests on hyperspace at this contract, expecting the caller to pass us the minor ID, a make HTTP task, which tells our Midpoint to make a call to the fillrep endpoint using the minor ID from the source, and to extract the score found at this JSON path, and finally, a transact task, which tells our Midpoint to take the score and post it back on chain at this address. Finally, we have a path object, which tells our Midpoint how to link the source and the two tasks. Publishing this Midpoint is as simple as running Midpoint publish. Now, we have a live oracle that is serving requests.
All right, and I don't have a live demo here, but what that showed is how in under 60 seconds, you could spin up an oracle that is live on Filecoin serving requests. And what I would have shown in that demo is that was a pretty simple oracle. It just called the publicly available endpoint. But if you wanted to call an endpoint that's a little bit more complex, say Google Maps, you need to authenticate, you want to pass in multiple parameters, you can do that just by changing the JSON file of that HTTP object. An even more complex oracle, something that needs OAuth, you can just chain multiple HTTP requests together. And Midpoint isn't just oracles. With Midpoint, you can build price feeds, you can build data bridges, you can build things that listen for on-chain events and send you notifications. And everything I just showed and talked about is live today. Run those 3 commands, you'll have an oracle set up on Filecoin. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. And we'll keep it going, and I'll hand over the mic to Mike, who's going to talk about Magmo.
Hello, my name is Mike Kirshner, and I'm with Magmo. So Magmo state channels, let's talk about them. We are part of Consensus Mesh, and we're happy to be receive some funding from the Filecoin Foundation. We're a team of 4. So what are we trying to build? The idea is to create a trustless payment network with instant finality. And the idea is to make it really easy to have trustless payments. What's the network setup? The network setup is just a contract deploy. You can deploy the contract on Ethereum. You can deploy it on Filecoin, anywhere that's EVM compatible. How does a participant join the network? All they have to do is just make a contract call that deposits some funds into the contract. A payment is just a signed message. It can be sent over any transport. It can be sent over a carrier pigeon. It can be sent over any sort of internet protocol, whatever you choose. Where is this stuff applicable? Anywhere you need high frequency, low latency payments. So Filecoin conditional payments, or really any retrieval market payments come to mind. You guys have probably heard about Bitcoin Lightning. That's another really popular payment network that's out there. And the Magma payments are quite a bit different. They're not based on hash time lock contracts. They're based on sort of a new set of ideas. So payments don't travel through intermediaries, and many payments can be made per channel. Let's do a quick demo. We'll have what we're calling Web3 Torrent with an uploader and a couple downloaders. So here we go. This is a web app that's live. It's a demo. What you're seeing right now is a participant uploading a file to the network. They're connecting to the payment network by depositing some funds to a contract. And then the other two participants are going to have a chance to download that file and make payments for that download. So we're seeing one of the participants starting to download. And then the really cool thing is that we're starting to see payments fly around. So the blue bubbles are payments being made, and the green ones are payments being received. And we're seeing now the final bottom participants starting to download from both of the uploaders. So this is all enabled with our payment network. So more information is at statechannels.org. We're also trying to hire a software developer. So if any of you guys are interested, let me know.
Cool. Thanks so much, Mike. We have two more pitches, and then we're kind of like near the end of today. So thanks for sticking around. Stephen again with another project, which is Go FVM SDK. I'll just hit play, and let's make sure we have sound on this one.
Hello everyone, this is a project showcase of Go FVM SDK. I would like to stress that the SDK is still under heavy development and is not production ready yet. This is a quick introduction of Go FVM SDK team. I am Batman13, the TPM of this project. Next we have Mike Lee, who is our engineering lead. Lastly, we have Joss, who is our developer advocate. The objective of this project is pretty straightforward. As you can see from the FVM documentation page, if you scroll down on the navigation on the left and go to Tools section, you will see that Go FVM SDK is part of the tooling initiative to enable a more diverse portfolio of programmers to develop native FVM actors. More specifically, our team aims to help onboard more Go developers to FVM ecosystem. Details on the project concept can be found in our GitHub repo, which is at the top here. The gist of the concept is that SDK basically allows developers to write native contracts/actors in Go language, which we offer full compatibility with FVM system calls and a full suite of developer support functions like integration and unit testing, code generation, scaffolding, and etc. Again, as the SDK is more about the plumbing, we don't have a demo video, but we will quickly walk you through how you can start writing Go contract in minutes. First, you will need to install Golang and either download our pre-compiled releases or build from source by yourself. Then you will invoke the patch command to patch the Go installation so that system calls are compatible with FVM. Installation will be done with once the patching is finished. Next, you can use new command to generate scaffolding for your Go contract project. The most important file I would like to point out here is actor.go. This is where you will write your contract in Go. Once you have finished coding, you can use build commands to compile the native WASM contract. Again, as we are more on the tooling side, the technology stack we use are leaning more towards Go and Rust language-based libraries. For our next step, Go FVM SDK will keep up with the latest development of FVM and hopefully serve more Go developers during the native FVM launch in mid-year. To connect with the team, we have hashtag Phil-Venus channel in Filecoin Project Slack and IPFS Force Community /Go FVM SDK GitHub repository. Also, I can always be reached on Slack channel through my ID @fatman13. This concludes my presentation today. Thank you for tuning in.
Great, and my mic is on again. Thanks to Fatman13 and the team for this development. Excited to see where they'll take it. So just as a reminder, we have one more presentation, which is actually super exciting. All the rage right now, stable diffusion, prompt generated images, and we have our very own Ellie to talk about that. After that, we'll have Colin back on stage to talk about the opportunities that exist for these teams and anybody else who's excited to build on FVM, and has this ambition to join our ecosystem. And then we'll have a panel with investors, with entrepreneurs in our ecosystem, talking about their experience and building on FVM. And then we'll have Juan, the founder of Protocol Labs, come on stage and kind of talk about FVM. But for now, that's just a preview. I'll hand over to Ellie to talk about Project Lilypad.
Yeah, thanks for the claps. So many great projects, right? I'm super excited for this mainnet launch. Good afternoon, Fielders. So I'm Ali. I'm a DevRel here at Filecoin and working on an exciting project called Project Lilypad. So firstly, quick intro on why we think, why we think that Bakuya, which is peer-to-peer compute nodes for your backend, and FVM are better together. So if we have a quick look at the tech stack, we can think of Filecoin as a storage layer or layer 0, the ability to perform computation over state with FVM as the layer 1, and then we want computation over that data. So Bakuya can bring this off-chain compute to the Filecoin ecosystem and with Lilypad to your smart contracts as well and to FVM. So it makes for some really powerful tooling and it can enable even more innovative things, hopefully. So what's exciting about Project Lilypad is that you can the ability to call these really big compute jobs with a smart contract. So it's a bridge, basically. And we're hoping that it can unlock all these kind of use cases and with a decentralized focus and with a Filecoin native ecosystem focus as well, because Bakuya runs on the back end. You can run any Docker or WASM job, and it runs on peer-to-peer nodes for data stored on IPFS and soon Filecoin as well. So really native Web3 valued edge compute backend. Alrighty, so a demo's worth 10,000 words. As I said, Project Lilypad operates as a bridge. So for this demo, I'm going to be running a stable diffusion. By the way, Project Lilypad is live on the FVM testnet, FVM hyperspace already. You can go and see more info on it on our GitHub too. I'm going to run a stable diffusion, thanks to projects before me for introducing that. Basically a text-to-image ML model. You enter a prompt, you get an image back. DALL-E, think DALL-E, if that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, so let's have a look at the demo. Basically, to call a job on the FVM, you create a smart contract that implements our LilyPad caller interface. And then, by the way, this example is up live on our GitHub as well, so you can go and grab that yourself. And in this video, you can see it being called, as well as see Bakuyao logs here, accepting the job and then running the job. And then you'll see the returned result come back to the original caller contract, as it does there. In this case, it's bringing back an IPFS CID, which is an image. That's an old one, but if you type in the CID, you'll see this folder of results, and you'll be able to see our lovely rainbow unicorn come back for us. So pretty awesome. Oh, by the way, we have built a few apps on this, including this NFT app. That tutorial is live on our YouTube, as well as on a Hacker Noon tutorial if you want to follow it there. And that will do for that. So what's next for Bakuyao? Well, we are going to build out, one of the problems with Stable Diffusion is we're not sure if the artists are being credited or paid for their original work. So we're going to build out an attribution model for this project, which will train off artist images. You'll be able to, as a user, select kind of this artist style that you want to do, enter a prompt, get back the image, and the artist will get paid if you've used their kind of style for that. We're also going to implement more of that functionality you saw in our use cases, so things like being able to send an email or text message from your FVM smart contract, and yeah, heaps more. If you want to be involved or you're a creator, please get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Ellie. And I can't wait for the first designer who will have 1 million clients using their style, like something that could never be done before. Okay, great. We're kind of in the back half of our presentation today. We'll switch now into kind of an outlook of what is possible for builders in the Filecoin ecosystem, and I'll hand over the mic to Colin to walk us through that.
Hi again, everyone. Good to see you again. Thanks, everyone, for coming. My presentation today is about building in the Filecoin ecosystem and the support structures that our team has to make sure builders are incredibly successful. I mentioned this earlier in the day, but there is no better time to join the Filecoin ecosystem than today. And that's because we have, for years, developed a system of education, hackathons, grants, accelerators, and on-ramps into capital and funding for builders all over the ecosystem, and we are pointing those resources at FVM builders very aggressively. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today and showcase the journey that developers can go through to build their hopes and dreams on FVM and Filecoin. Great. So as many of you know, your journey as a developer, as a founder, as an early builder, an entrepreneur is not linear. There are many paths to joining and bringing your hopes and dreams to reality. Some start through developer education, some join a hackathon to learn about some piece of technology like FVM. Some take grants and some take really deep advice on concentrated accelerator programs. And some are just repeat entrepreneurs that have been Web3 for a while and jump straight to a seed round or even a Series A round. We are committed to kind of helping that full journey, no matter where it starts or where it ends, for early FVM builders, and making sure that founders and entrepreneurs and builders succeed at all phases of those journey. So if you step back, the PL network, which is a whole group of companies that the PL has supported, building on Filecoin, IPFS, and Web3 at large. We have supported teams at all stages, from grant stages, which is kind of represented at the bottom, to seed rounds, which is that green bar, to Series A and Series B and Series D, even Series E funding rounds. And so folks can join through hackathons, but they can progress through this journey. And so far, over the last couple of years, we have supported over 500 teams in this kind of like builder's funnel environment and have pointed our resources at them. In total, those 500 plus teams have raised close to $500 million in funding, signaling tremendous interest in our general ecosystems across Filecoin, IPFS, and the PLN at large. And if you're kind of like interested in building this is the kind of opportunities that we're trying to put towards to help you. Furthermore, if you look at the kind of bottom two rows, which are more grant funding at the early stages, more than $17 million have been issued in grant funding by the Filecoin Foundation and Protocol Labs towards those teams getting started in our ecosystems. Now, at the early stage of the funnel, so if you're just getting started as a builder, there's a number of different paths to get your feet wet. Over the last couple years, PLN has developed a whole pipeline of services here, including hackathons, where just last year, 70,000 builders were exposed to Filecoin or IPFS or similar technologies and have published over 3,100 projects on hackathons.filecoin.io. We've issued countless micro grants and developer grants through the Filecoin Foundation and Protocol Labs, and there's a whole list of requests for startups that are specifically targeted at different tools and projects and services startups looking to build within these ecosystems. Now, what's really interesting is that we're starting to point those services at builders on FVM. So already Space Warp has issued FVM microgrants, has ran the biggest hackathon ever in the history of the Filecoin ecosystem, and are starting to get into other kind of like services like impact evaluators, accelerators, etc. In fact, one thing to celebrate is ETH Global's last hackathon, Space Warp, that had over 1,000 hackers participate, 280 project submissions in over 82 countries. And I just want to give a big round of applause to all those teams that presented today stemming from this hackathon. It's just remarkable to see. At the next phase, when you're kind of ready to get to a minimum viable product, starting to get in front of real customers, and start to really develop a company or a project with more traction, we have developed the Founders brand by Protocol Labs, which are acceleration services and portfolio support led by Ruben in the back there, who we'll hear from in a moment. Now, over the last few years, Founders has incubated 250 startups that have raised $200 million, partnering with over 20 accelerators, primarily in the Web3 space. And that is a remarkable kind of like launch pad for folks that have an MVP, but really need 3 months of focused attention, mentorship, capital to take it from an MVP into a really viable, fundable team or business. This has been an incredible kind of ecosystem for many, many teams, and they've really accelerated their funding. And I'm super excited to announce that there are 2 FVM-focused accelerator cohorts launching in the next few months. One led by Lawton Cash with Shakai over here, and 2 led by Graph Paper Capital, led by Gabriel, who's somewhere here as well. So give them a big round of applause. These are the early adopters for FVM-focused companies in our ecosystems, and they have recruited over $4 million in dedicated capital to get those teams off the ground. And we'll hear from those teams in just a minute. Finally, when you've progressed past the stage where you're in kind of growth stage mode, you've reached product market fit, and you need growth capital to expand your team, expand your services, the PL network has over 4,000 investors that we can start to connect you with to reach that next phase of adoption. And what we've done here is really tried to focus a series of events to concentrate that capital on teams building roughly in the Filecoin ecosystem and the IPFS ecosystem as well. The first one of that we ran in September in Singapore. It was called Phil.vc, and it was so successful that it attracted 300 leading investors representing trillions of capital and 26 startups pitched, with many of them leaving the room with term sheets and engaged investor conversations to fund their startups. So this was kind of our first try at this. It was an in-person event that was incredibly successful and led to like a tremendous amount of capital being concentrated at those 26 teams. I'm super happy to announce that on March 21st, we're going to be doing our next version of Phil.vc in a completely remote environment so we can attract investors all over the world and not just Asia. So huge round of applause for the Phil.vc team. This is going to kick off on March 21st. And if you're a startup, a builder that you feel like you're ready for that stage of capital attraction, please go to the Phil.vc website and apply to be featured as part of this event. And this was just a subset of some of the logos that were represented at Phil Singapore, which were super, super impressive to see folks in there live. So in conclusion, for FVM builders, there is literally no better time to join the Filecoin ecosystem. You have familiar technology with EVM-based smart contracts that you can build on. You have many developer on-ramps, hackathons, grants programs of various different sizes, and requests for startups in case you're searching for an idea. There are deep support for founders through our accelerator cohorts and phases and services. There's incredible VC interest, and increasingly so, in startups building on FVM. And of course, you have a thriving community to support you at every stage of the game. So huge round of applause for FVM builders. I'm super excited to call up a panel of builders and folks that'll talk about some of those services. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Colin. So before we dive into the accelerator team who's going to really sort of unpack some of the really exciting activities going on, we're going to talk about just really briefly a 5-minute palette cleanser on essentially one of the activities we ran as a part of Space Warp that basically empowered builders to map value as it exists, as it's emerging basically on FVM leading into mainnet. So this is a project basically led by Network Goods, which is a team within the Protocol Labs network. We work essentially on revolutionary coordination systems, and we dug into basically the different incentives going into the FVM mainnet launch and imagine different ways in which we could, again, empower community members and experts to basically identify, assess, and reward valuable work going into the mainnet. So the way that we did that was ran these processes using a mechanism called impact evaluators, where builders would basically submit projects, vote with a signal of the strength of their conviction using quadratic voting, and then top projects would basically receive recognition and rewards in accordance with the results of that voting round. So that populates what's publicly published as a builder's leaderboard. So these are basically a community-driven resource that gives anyone insight into the current status of an ecosystem as it's basically emerging. So it's like the concept of an enhanced ecosystem pulse, because it basically is aggregating the sentiment of the people most sort of best positioned to identify the valuable work being done. So these were basically running on 1 month, or sorry, 2 every other week loops, so 2-week loops, and we're about halfway through the total amount of rounds and have 3 more remaining. So you can submit your project if you're building on the FVM, when the deadline is this coming Monday. And so we put this QR code up to basically go check out the leaderboard and to learn more. But what's really exciting is that what's emerged from the piloting of these 2 mechanisms coupled together of impact evaluators and leaderboards is this really interesting model that we plan on basically continuing to deploy beyond the FVM mainnet launch and into other pockets and ecosystem and projects around Protocol Labs and beyond in the broader Web3 space. So we're super excited to basically partner with more individuals around our customizable impact evaluator tool and to grow this model of basically sort of live community-driven ecosystem pulses. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and call up this video, according to Lucas. Great.
We're basically developing technologies to improve science.
Bringing people together using market-based mechanisms.
Homomorphic encryption.
We're building accessible software for everyone.
We are a token compensation platform for Web3 employment.
We're building yield curve for Web3.
We make AI accessible.
We are a global weather network powered by Web3.
We make high potential talent more visible.
We are pushing humanity forward.
All right.
Okay, cool. So could I please welcome to the stage Ruben and Gabriel and Shikai, Vuk, Jonathan and Denise. And I'll just hand over the mic and let you do the talking.
Excellent, thank you. There's no sequence.
Maybe you could try, but I think we have a photo, so it'll be all good.
Yes, how we do this? Yeah.
All right, I'll come here and scoot down just a little bit.
Yeah. Do you mind if I take like the far right?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we can pass it too.
Awesome. Am I in it? No. You did, man. Good to see you. Yeah. Thank you, Lucas. All right. Yeah. All right. Yep. And you should go over there. Okay. Amazing. All right, welcome everyone. Before we start, can I maybe get a show of hands? Who of you has worked with or in a startup before? Raise your hand, please. Amazing, this is great. And then who considers themselves a builder today? Great, okay. So all of you did come to the right place. This is a panel on the opportunities for founders with venture scale ambitions. And the objective of this talk is to provide you an overview of what the PLN at large and the PL Founders Program specifically have to offer founders with venture scale ambition. All right, so let's start with a round of introduction of our amazing panelists. Maybe at the very back, Jonathan, you want to start?
Thank you. Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan. I'm a co-founder of Glyph. I'm not sure if you heard of Glyph, but we've built a lot of critical apps and tools for the Filecoin network, like a wallet, a multi-sig, and we run nodes as well. So if you haven't heard of Glyph, you're going to hear it soon.
Hi everyone, Shikai here, partner at Longhash Ventures. At Longhash Ventures, we bootstrap ecosystems, and we're honored to have been the first accelerator to work with great ecosystems like Polkadot, XLR, and of course, Filecoin with Protocol Labs. Since 3 years ago, done 3 cohorts now. We've accelerated more than 70 startups and helped them raise more than $150 million collectively, many of them at unicorn valuations already. And last year, we also announced our 100 million fund focused on multi-chain infrastructure.
Hey, my name is Vuk. I'm the founder of FVM. We are a liquid staking protocol for Filecoin. We are building a bunch of tools that make life easier for storage providers, working with great folks like Seagate. And basically building a bunch of infrastructure that allows the Filecoin ecosystem to be much more efficient.
I'll pass it back to you. I'm Gabriel. I'm the founder and managing partner of Graph Paper Capital. Graph Paper Capital is an early stage Web3 accelerator and networked ecosystem. So we're a network of fellow founders and builders. Myself, I'm a 3-time founder, 2-time EIR. I previously founded and built Tachyon, which is a Web3 accelerator incubated inside of Consensus Mesh. We invested in over 90 Web3 companies. They've collectively raised $150 million at close to $1 billion in valuations. We've been long-time business partners with the folks at Protocol Labs. And as part of our new accelerator, really focused on bringing in high-quality, high-engaged, high-leveraged individuals to help mentor our founders as fellow builders, helping you get from 0 to 1 quickly.
All right. Thank you, Gabriel. And hi, everyone. My name is Denise, and I'm here to represent the PLN side of things. My team is called Spaceport, and we are the super connectors in the network. You can think of us as that hub in a hub-and-spoke network model. We are here to provide connections, help teams collaborate with each other. An example is We're starting a new program for founders within the network to support each other, get connected, focused around FVM. Two of the teams within this program were David from Lit Protocol and T Being from Ownership Labs. And both of those two teams came to the PLN via Longhash. So they're very familiar with Shikai's work. And similarly, I've personally worked very closely with Matt and Justin from Monaverse. They're very familiar with Gabriel and are the reason, we're also big fans of them at the PLN. So thank you so much for bringing them in. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. And closing it out, my name is Ruben, and I work with founders at Protocol Labs. Amazing. Cool. So let's start maybe with the investor's perspective, looking at, Shikai and then also at you, Gabriel. So what excites you about FVM?
All right. Yeah, I think firstly, FVM enables a lot of new ideas, new mechanisms that previously were either impractical or unheard of, right? I think things like data DAOs, things like decentralized CDNs, and of course, compute over data. So of course, these were really mind-blowing announcements, but what do they mean, right? Kind of vague. What kind of verticals can these affect? So a couple of ideas come to mind. One is with things like data DAOs. What if currently with, say, NFT, PFP communities, they are very passive holders? What if we can incentivize them to create content? So it's truly a community-driven approach. Here, we can look again at things like AI, right? Where there's a lot of data and compute that's required. And how do you keep it, let's say, with a self-sovereign basis? How do you do that over self-sovereign data? How do you organize compute over a large decentralized network? How do you run the computations of these models after they've been trained in a decentralized and verifiable way? So all these are exciting new possibilities, and there might be some Web 2 possibilities that we can port over to Web 3 as well. That were previously impractical. Things like look at TikTok, look at Twitch or YouTube. Now with FVM, these things can come to Web 3 as well.
Amazing. And Gabriel, would love to hear from you as well.
Ditto. I agree with everything that Shikai said. Maybe putting my investor and founder hat on, maybe I'll answer from both sides of the seat. So I think the first thing that's really exciting is, Filecoin is based on real functional use case, right? Which means the demand is really sticky. It's not like we're building another, trading platform to, speculate on monkey JPEGs or something, right? Like, there's real actual demand. Proof of physical work, I think, is something that that investment thesis that Multicoin has come up with, I think, is really smart. And so as you layer in this, programmatic aspect of Filecoin via FVM, opening up this open data economy, I think, creates all new business use cases, which creates a massive market. We would venture to guess that this is going to open up something, orders of magnitude, trillions of dollars worth of economic value. That's a massive TAM. And again, it's highly sticky if you're a builder building in that ecosystem because it's based on real functional use case, right? And so then the other thing that I think about a lot is as a founder, as a builder, you don't want to be entering into hyper-competitive markets. Like, if you're a founder building an AI or ML company right now, good luck to you. It's extremely competitive right now. But this is a whole new frontier. This is a whole new ecosystem that's opening up. And the possibilities are absolutely mind-boggling. Shikai mentioned a number of them, whether they be data DAOs, whether they be new DeFi applications, but it's a whole new primitive. And I think we're going to see a lot of first-mover advantages in this ecosystem, which means early builders, early startup founders and developers sitting in this room. It's a massive, massive opportunity, and it's anchored to a huge TAM for you. So I think that's very exciting.
Amazing. All right, thank you for sharing from the investor's perspective. Let's maybe turn it over to the founders and the builders here. So I would love to hear maybe from you, Vuk, what excites you about FVM?
Yeah, generally I would like to double down on what Gabriel just said. I usually always wanted to be part of an ecosystem that is super young. Joined the Ethereum ecosystem 2017. We were clueless on what we were doing, and basically in an act of desperation, we built a dev tool because we were developers. But actually it turned out to be great, and that company is valued at 300 million now because we were first. And we were focused on actually solving problems that were there, talking to a bunch of users, and just ride that innovation wave that, of course, happened with the Ethereum ecosystem. Then I joined Cardano. I was doing smart contracts there, helped a few startups that were pretty bad, but they were first. And they also raised 10 tens of millions of dollars. They did a great success. They are still around, super successful. And that just shows that it's super important to time when you're actually joining an ecosystem and what we're working on, rather than being much better, like from the operational standpoint, from other people around you. So I would say like the Filecoin ecosystem is super young, even though it's been around for 2 years, because smart contracts were not out yet. You could not actually do most of the stuff. So like all of that was kind of postponed to the point where like now you have ways of actually flexibly defining things on chain and actually capturing the value, which was super hard to do before.
Super exciting. Maybe Jonathan.
Yeah. Well, first, just to echo what you all said, I totally agree. I'll provide a little bit of like my own spin as well. So the reason that I got involved in this ecosystem to begin with was just content addressable data. Like, does that mean things to people in this room? Content addressable data, multi-hashing, the problems with location addressed data. Anyways, I'll skip the nerd out. But I've been waiting for this moment since I started building in the IPFS space. The types of protocols and new storage primitives that we can build with the FVM and multi-hashes are like not possible to do today anywhere else, right? So like that type of stuff excites me when a technology completely enables some other technology that was impossible to come before it. So yeah, that gets me excited.
Amazing. All right, so let's imagine, that we have all of these founders out there. They are, ready to go. Their teams are burning to build. I know that you, Shikai, and you, Gabriel, you have something cooking. Do you want to share with the audience what you have planned, a little bit on the timelines? Maybe starting with Gabriel this time.
Yeah, actually, we just soft launched today and announced, so I'm very excited. We're going to be making significant investments in this ecosystem. I think we're very excited. So our May batch applications open March 15th, the day after mainnet launch for FVM. We're going to be looking for 10 to 12 companies, amazing founders that we can work very closely with, giving you seed capital, so $250,000 investment in your company, access to a massive network, over 100 people within our network and ecosystem, primarily of founders turned investors like me, who like to be very hands-on, helping you iterate. The best early users or customers that you can get are people who have built companies before. They give the absolute best feedback on product, on market, on go-to-market. That's what our network is primarily based off. So we really want to create the most high leverage, highly engaged network for founders building in this space. So very excited about that. It'll obviously conclude with a demo day, but we'll give you access to our investor network. We've been building that network over years, over 4 or 5 years now. Again, we've previously backed over 90 companies that have invested, raised more than 150 million at close to $1 billion in valuation. So we're expecting very big things from this ecosystem, and we want to make some significant investments in founders that are building in this ecosystem. So if that's you, we'd love to meet you.
All right. In parallel as well, instead of software, here I am to announce officially that we will be opening applications for the FVM Genesis Accelerator cohort powered by LongHashX. So, all right. So all the teams that are coming, sorry, just a little bit on the program. Each team that joins will receive $200,000 in funding. And of course, with our dedicated venture building support, the mentorship support from fellow builders who are more experienced or investors, and of course, workshops on the most popular topics like product strategy and design, let's say tokenomics, governance, community building, and of course, essential things like legal and fundraising. And I'd like to share a little bit of an interesting thing as well. Well, over the years, we have been expanding our network and also trying to decentralize our network. So we have launched, actually, in the current or the previous accelerator cohort, what we call the LongHash Web, a soulbound token-based peer-to-peer reputation and contribution network. So any of you who join the accelerator cohort, as well as mentors and scouts who contribute to the program, will have an on-chain social graph, and you have an immutable evidence, proof of your relationship and contribution that we hope to continue to grow in the multi-chain world, as well as with FVM and the Filecoin ecosystem.
Amazing. All right, so if there's founders in the audience, there's a lot of capital waiting for you, a lot of support, a lot of networks, and this is not their first radio. I can say by now, these are friends, these are partners, so you will be in amazing hands. Moving on maybe to Vuk again. Hey, So you have been in an accelerator yourself. You might be the right person to share with the audience how participating in an accelerator has helped you to go to where you are today, which is about to close a major funding round backed by premier names.
Yeah, so I was actually on both sides, so I was able to to see what was going on. I mean, you should think about accelerators as folks that actually help you get all the context that they are, by the way, getting all the time from multiple locations. So they just give you that super fast. So you don't need to be out there as a founder. You can be building, and then you can leverage all the connections that those accelerators have. And they can also guide you what are the best ways of approaching fundraising in a particular market, because that's what they do all the time, and they have done that probably for the past years, and they have a lot of context on that. So for us, it was super useful because of course, the context that we got, but also because of the reputation of the different accelerators that are out there. We specifically were working with the Alliance DAO. Alliance DAO is pitching the vision of being the YC of Web3. To some degree, they're actually on the path to becoming that. And yeah, that was super helpful for us, and it did help us get to a round for sure.
Amazing. All right. Playing it over to Jonathan, maybe. You have not been part of an accelerator, but you have been an active member of the PLN.
That's right, yeah.
Can you maybe, explore a little bit on how PLN has helped you to get to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just to preface this, being a founder is awesome. You get to build new things and take risk. But being a founder is also really difficult and oftentimes super lonely. You don't have all the answers that you need. You haven't experienced things that if you had that experience, you would know better about what the right answer was. And so it's really important when you start a business that you have good foundations, you have good people that you can trust who are intelligent and motivated for you to achieve your goals as well, incentive alignment. And that's what I feel with PL Network. Whatever problem that you have, maybe you know the answer and then you go and you do your thing. But if you don't know the answer, there's no better people to ask than the people who are in your corner, who are experienced in legal, in tax, in technical, in strategy, marketing, growth, you name it. And so just being able to have that network attached to you and as part of your company, it's invaluable, honestly.
Amazing. So we are throwing this word, PLN, PL, network at you quite a lot. And we thought it might be helpful to bring someone who's deeply involved with crafting the PLN on stage today, which is Denise. So Denise, would you mind sharing a little bit on the mission and the goal of the PL network with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And Jonathan, really appreciate the detail you've given into how rewarding, but also how challenging it can be to be a founder. We're all here because we're very mission aligned with Filecoin, with FVM. We want to drive breakthroughs in computing, in humanity, through all of these new protocols, new primitives that we're creating. And that's not easy. And so once you've been through an accelerator program, you understand how valuable they can be, even years beyond. But as teams scale, your needs change. You have new challenges around going to market, around recruiting, around taxes, that unless you have a network you can rely on, it's difficult to find the answers to those questions. And so that's where the PLN comes in. We in this room and beyond have all been through some portion of those challenges. And we want to pool all of those resources, all of that knowledge to help teams who are going through it for the first time. Juan and Molly have talked a lot about crossing that innovation chasm and going through the R&D pipeline. The Protocol Labs network really helps you get to that last step of scaling your team and reaching those millions of users that you've envisioned for your project.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Cool. So maybe returning briefly to Gabriel and Shikai. So Accelerator are truly, a powerful entry point into that, Protocol Labs network. I guess what many of the, founders and builders in the audience would like to know is, what do I need to bring as a founder? What do I need to bring as a team to even be considered Accelerator ready? Can you explore on that a little bit, maybe this time starting with Shikai? Yeah?
Sure thing.
Actually, we're very open to founders at a pretty early stage. I think the minimum requirement you need is just a clear idea and a committed team. Of course, some nice to haves that will maximize your chances of getting into the accelerator program is some validation of your idea, right? If you've built the MVP, you've gotten some early users, you've won some hackathon prizes, you've gotten some grants. These are all positive indicators, but nice to haves, right? I think we have accepted teams and founders from like even before that, like a very early idea stage, and they've blossomed into fantastic examples, which I guess we'll share in a bit of time. Yeah. I guess one thing to watch out for is because our applications are not yet open, so do follow our Twitter at @longhashvc and @longhashx so that you can get prepared whenever applications open, be one of the first or be prepared to submit it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I've worked with, mentored, invested in, first check-in with so many founders. It's almost like pattern matching. And the things that we look for time and time again are, one, can you explain the unique insight that you have into the market or into a particular customer, into their need, into the problem that you're solving? Like, and truly articulate it, not with a bunch of buzzwords or hype words, but like really using the minimum amount of words necessary. Like, do you have a true handle on the market that you're entering into? The second thing that I always look for, that we always look for is an understanding of why you. What do you know, what's your domain expertise, or maybe you have a personal story of you having to overcome that grit, that perseverance that it takes to build a company. As Jonathan said, I mean, I've done this, I keep saying 4 times now. It's never easy. I mean, it is the most, birthing a company, doing anything, creating anything and bringing it into the world takes a tremendous amount of effort and grit and perseverance and having to overcome challenges. And I think probably everybody on the stage has had to do that. Many of you sitting out here have had to do that. And so we just look for that. And then is there any kind of a semblance in traction? And if there's not traction, what have you built or what have you created previously that we can kind of look to in your past? I think those are kind of like the 3 hallmarks of what we look for. And not for us to select you or choose you or invest in you. You should be doing that yourself anyways, right? Like in order to make sure that you have the highest probability of success. I have built companies that have gone to 0. It is the worst feeling ever. So, in order to not do that, I think those are the 3 things that we look for, but maybe those are the 3 things that you should be looking for in your project as well.
And maybe also for you, how can founders learn more about, how to engage, how to apply?
Follow us on Twitter, GPC_XYZ, or visit us at graphpapercapital.xyz, and we'd love to meet you. Our new website will be dropping next week, and then applications open for the spring cohort March 15th. So
amazing.
Very excited to meet all of you.
Thank you for sharing. Cool. All right. Turning it back to our founders here, our builders. So what message, if you had one message that you could send out there to the audience, to the builders that are out there, like what message do you have specifically relating to FVM? Like why should folks be excited right now? You spoke to it a little bit, Vuk, so maybe let's start with Jonathan for that one.
Sure. So yeah, just to build off my last answer about like the FVM enabling things that were previously impossible. I think it's quite interesting to take innovation from other blockchain networks and bring them into Filecoin. I think we'll see a lot of that, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's value in that too. But there's certain parts of Filecoin and the FVM that when you look close enough, you realize they cannot be done anywhere else. There is not another technology in the world that does this. And we all know in this room the technology is not perfect. It's not there yet. There's a long way to go. So like getting in at this stage means 2 things. One is like you're contributing to a project that's actually doing something that was previously impossible. And 2, like you will be in the headspace and have like some new sort of creativity where you can build something yourself that wasn't possible before. And it's hard. It will take many at-bats, a lot of failures, but there will be a few really, really interesting new things that will stick around for a very long time, and you could literally be the one to have built that.
Yeah, I would definitely double down on the fact that you want to create something unique. On the other hand, like the Filecoin protocol is probably one of the most complicated protocols out there from the token economics standpoint, like from all the tech that it actually had for a while. And that is all opportunities for founders to actually learn, build a lot of unfair advantages in. That means that people from the Ethereum ecosystem, when they figure out that some stuff works in this ecosystem, it's going to be super hard for them to get in the Filecoin ecosystem and try to replicate the same thing, because there is a lot of context that you need to learn. And even if you try to do something that doesn't work so well, you're actually building that unfair advantage that will possibly help you find the next job in a team that has raised funding for something else. And you'll definitely have built that unfair advantage in the ecosystem. So just focus on things that are not available anywhere else and focus on actually learning technology that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Amazing. All right, everyone. This concludes our panel. This was amazing. Thank you, all of you. This has been great. I hope you founders and builders out there, feel inspired and oriented and know where to go, know how to engage. Yeah, thank you for tuning in and being here. Thank you.
Thanks for showing up, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, one more big round of applause for our panel. Thank you all so much for driving growth in our ecosystem. So while we transition here into our last piece, which is a note from the Protocol Labs founder, Juan Benet. We're here just kind of setting up the stage and whatnot, but wanted to recap a few things that you heard today, right? So many of you got here this morning, heard a ton about the exciting capabilities that are emerging with the launch of FVM, with its going to mainnet. And we're incredibly excited and grateful for the amount of excitement and activity that's actively happening right now, and the growth that is being sustained. So if you were present in the room today, you heard, quite literally, the endless energy. It is one big shared space for those joining on ETH Global TV. Last I checked, it was about 350 people. But this venue has been packed all day and filled with energy and excitement. And so we just want to have a heartfelt thank you to everyone that's been here and been involved. And before we kick off and pass the mic over to Juan, we're going to see if we can get the folks over in the wing to meander this way over to their left. And Lucas and Ruben, if y'all can help corral some of the people as well from that side over this way, that'd be much appreciated. I know Paige is helping as well. And we'll get going here in just a minute. Thank you.
All right, hey everyone. Great to see you. Really excited to be here, closing out the day. Since I'm the only thing standing between you and some food, I'm gonna be pretty fast. So I'm gonna blaze through a few things. I want to talk about just FVM and the journey to get here. This has been a long road. I want to talk about a bunch of opportunities for builders and different kinds of applications that are possible. And I want to also give a quick snapshot at what building startups in this space looks like, and how this community has formed one of the most helpful environments for building new things. So we're at the last stages of what has been a very long road. We started designing the beginnings of the FVM in late 21, early 22, even building on ideas that have been around for over 4 or 5 years. So the FVM team building this from scratch has been hard at work for close to 2 years now. And this major milestone is going to be this huge moment for the entire network and for all of the builders in the whole ecosystem. Now, the FVM going live on mainnet is going to be the opening of the floodgates for all kinds of applications on the ecosystem, you're finally going to be able to imbue your data with programmability in a way that so far has not been possible across Web3. So that's going to be super exciting. A bunch of really cool use cases are going to emerge. There's some milestones beyond that, so things like milestone 2.2, which brings WASM, smart contracts, and so on, and then later some other improvements. So there's still some long road ahead, but this is going to be like the major big milestone that the culmination of 2 years of work for a ton of people. So I think a lot of people have spoken about all the different kinds of things that FVM unlocks. I want to highlight a few here. So things like data DAOs, we've been talking a lot about them, and they've been kind of difficult to build between other chains and Filecoin. I think one of the key components that was missing is the ability to couple the DAO activity with the smart contracts themselves, storing the data, or potentially computing over the data. So I think those, we're likely going to start seeing these data DAOs emerging. There's a whole range of, I kind of gave this talk at Phil Lisbon talking about a request for startups. Go watch that because there's a ton of different ideas here for builders. I'm especially keen to see different kind of social applications now being possible. So far, social has not really taken off in Web3 because it's extremely difficult to deal with the scale and volume of data and computation that you need to actually power a social application. So now with this, we're starting to get to have all of the primitives that you need to build these kinds of social applications. Not all of them yet. I think some of the compute over data networks still have to land to be able to do some of the things. But we should be able to start now some of the early style Web 2 social applications and be able to build them at this scale. I think games are also going to be extremely important for this community. I don't see that many game developers here. Raise your hand if you're a game developer. Empty. See, that's a bug. We got to fix that. I think games are going to be a huge part of this. Because so far, games in other blockchains haven't been able to deal with putting all of the game assets themselves into the chain itself, or being able to start using the outputs of smart contracts in the game logic and altering entire worlds and so on. So those kinds of things will suddenly become possible. That'll be pretty interesting. The FVM website has a whole get started area. So for the builders in the room that are just getting started, go check this out. And the Space Warp program with hackathons and grants and so on is there for you to help you get started. I wanted to speak a little bit about how the FVM fits into the broader Filecoin vision. So the mission of Filecoin is to build a decentralized, efficient, and robust foundation for humanity's information. That requires bringing programmability to the data. So the FVM is like the linchpin piece that connects the adding of data and preservation of the data to making it useful for the world. So in addition to just being able to archive it and store it or serve it, you want to be able to do something useful with that data. And the FVM is the first part of that picture. So we've talked about the Filecoin master plan in terms of these 3 steps. Step 1 is to build the world's largest decentralized storage network. We've done that. So huge actually, round of applause for all the people that have worked so hard for a long time to make this happen. And step 2, we're making great progress on step 2. We've onboarded, I think, have we broken 200 petabytes of any 600 petabytes of it? Yeah. Yeah, I was looking at some old slides, and yeah, 600 petabytes. That's amazing. That's huge. That's enormous. We're almost going to hit an exabyte. When are we going to hit an exabyte? Probably by June. Yeah, you heard it here. That's an enormous amount of data. Just to put that into context, we've done these estimations of like the scale of certain data sets. And so things like YouTube, for example, are in like the single exabytes, like maybe 5, maybe 7 exabytes of content. And so that is a testament to the scale that you can achieve with Filecoin, which is way outside the rest of Web3, right? So most of the data in Web3 outside of Filecoin is something like 10 petabytes or less. So that's kind of the massive scale difference. So let's go back to compute. The FVM is what is going to enable all of this computation to arrive. So there's also this great diagram from Raul, who's been shaping the vision for FVM as the kind of computation over state that's required to be able to build other kinds of computation on top. So you first deploy the FVM to enable the smart contracts to work, and then on top of that, you can then build all kinds of other computation systems. So think of compute over data projects like Bacalhau, and other kinds of things where you can now run large-scale computing pipelines on top of your data. So we first launched the FVM, and that's kind of the first piece of bringing computation, and that seeds the ground for all these other larger-scale compute pieces. So I think one of the things that everybody here should be paying attention to is how this space is going to emerge, because we're going to start to see lots of different kinds of computational-oriented L2s appear on top of Filecoin. So things like things that kind of map into this large space of different kinds of computational networks that achieve verifiability and privacy in different ways will likely fit as different kinds of L2s. So there's going to be a great opportunity as soon as FVM lands for people to create those L2s to bring that kind of computation into the space, not just operating over smart contract data, which is very small, but now operating over large data sets and large user data. So today, most of the Web3 space, when we're thinking about zero-knowledge proofs and so on, we tend to think about it in terms of smart contracts and doing verifying smart contracts. We're not yet talking about verifying the activity directly on, say, a social network, or verifying the activity on say, like a housing marketplace to check that inspections actually happened, or the data collected about a specific from a meter is correct, and so on. So all of that is going to be made possible by these computational L2s. And there's not that many people building these yet, so there's a huge open field here for people seeking to build these kinds of things. One other thing worth highlighting is that Filecoin has always been highly collaborative with many other ecosystems, and we try to build bridges to many other chains. And so think of being able to mix, now with the FVM, it's going to make it dramatically easier to interconnect Filecoin storage to these other chains. So this also creates opportunities for launching kind of Filecoin-specific smart contracts in all of these other networks, making it so that you can call out perpetual storage on Filecoin from those networks. So you can imagine calling contracts from any one of these networks straight in, writing through to Filecoin. And so the FVM was the missing piece. Now that we have that, we're going to be able to do this. And so using all of these things, we can finally get to large-scale Web3 applications. The entire Web3 space is not yet able to produce something like YouTube, something like TikTok, something like Instagram and Twitter and so on. And this is like a very large step towards that. Once we do this and we build the computational networks, then at that point we'll be ready for those kinds of applications. So this is the next step, and then after that, the computational networks. Cool, so that's how the FVM fits in the Filecoin master plan. The last thing I wanted to talk about is just how to start startups in these ecosystems. You heard a lot from many builders earlier, but I just wanted to kind of break down the space into a set of steps. I gave a version of this talk at ETH India, and it was one of the things that helped a number of people to get started in their journey, so I figured I would repeat it here. So first off, you have to start by learning a ton about the world. This means usually this starts with people either in other jobs or in school and so on, learning a ton about technology and development and products and so on. Then people start experimenting with ideas, and this looks like a very kind of hack-oriented stage where you're just trying to build many different kinds of components. This is where hackathons are extremely useful, because hackathons give you this forcing function to get started to build things, meaning it creates the forcing function for a small group of people, like whether it's 1 to 4 people, working together, building a thing with a deadline. You're forced to make sure to produce a thing and show it and deploy it. And you're forced to answer all kinds of questions about who's going to use this thing, how are they going to interact with it. You're going to get real-time feedback from a lot of people trying the thing. And it's going to expose you and force you to learn tons of stuff to build your hack. So I've often seen hackathons as one of the biggest source of startups in the world. Now, after that moment, if you find one of these, if you go through these hackathons and you find something that maybe has some legs, and you'll get that as feedback from other people in the hackathon or judges and so on, you can then choose to pursue that and start working on it more. And you get into this moment of validation. You want to validate that idea and see if it is actually gonna work in the market. And that's where you turn your hack into kind of like a minimum product. Not yet a minimum viable product. You can't actually like necessarily launch that into the world, but at least you can get it into like the shape of what could potentially be a product. And this is where you want to talk to and potential users and so on to really assess whether the thing you're building is going to solve somebody's problem and is going to create a viable product, a viable business. And so from there, once you have that picture, you're now kind of like startup ready. And you can, at that moment, when you have a sense of how that product can actually be viable, you can now start the startup. And you translate your minimum product into a minimum viable product. This is a great space for accelerators. So this is where accelerators really fit in. They help you get from like the early hacks and kind of the early validation stages into starting the startup, building the minimum viable product, and starting to scale it. And then from there, you go into getting traction. So like the next thing that you need to really focus on is how do you launch your thing and get traction as relevant to your product. So some products you can kind of get done quickly, build them, and then start building a network. Other products take a lot longer to build, and so traction might be different. It might be in terms of like letters of interest or intents to use a thing and so on. So it kind of varies by product, but you kind of like from accelerator to this kind of like pre-seed stage is when you want to start getting a ton of traction in your MVP. And you're starting to get the signs of early product market fit. You're starting to find the areas of the market that like really care about your product. And then from there, you get into kind of like the seed stage of startups, which is kind of like where you're finding your strong sense of product market fit. And at that point, you start growing the business. In ancient times, like 15 years ago, pre-seed and seed would have been like seed and Series A. But nowadays, because all of the scales have like shifted, now we sort of like call them this way. I guess in even more ancient history than that, like 20, 25 years ago, seed would have been like the early validation part, but whatever. One of the key things though with all of this is that our community has built a super successful way of supporting people across all of these stages. So there's programs dedicated to support people going through each one of these stages in the journey of building a startup. You heard about them from the panel that just happened. You heard a lot about people in the kind of startup stage, in the accelerators area. And you also heard from many of the founders and builders who are like already now growing the business. So I wanted to take a moment to highlight folks like who here kind of like started a business or started a product, started a company in this community. Can you raise your hand? That's awesome. Huge congratulations. And how many of you started with a hackathon in this community? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? That's awesome. Yeah, so there's a huge testament to this community to be able to build this entire structure to help folks. I wanted to just invite a couple people to just come up for a moment and just share a little bit about their stories of how they got started with those hackathons. Ayush, do you want to come up and tell us a little bit?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Juan. So my journey has been, we participated in ETH Global Hackfest. So I think this similar structure, this is the replica which we had created, where it was ETH Global Hackfest 2020, done by Protocol Labs and Ethereum in general, where the idea was pretty simple. It was a 30-day hackathon. And what we are building essentially at Huddle01 is a communication toolkit for Web3. Where we saw that everybody was talking about decentralization, Web 3.0, but all their meetings were happening over Zoom, Google Meet, or Microsoft Teams. And that's where they said, hey, you know what? If we are talking so much about Web 3.0, why not build a platform which essentially imbibes that kind of culture into it? So that's how we built Huddle01 in those 30 days of hackathon. Post that hackathon, we got grants. Basically in the hackathon, we won a couple of prizes. We won audio track from PL. That was one of that led us to bootstrap our team, build a team, and then essentially we got a couple of more grants. Post that, we got into Tachyon Accelerator and also into Longhash Accelerator. That's how the journey of how to build the product, how to do customer interviews, that started off. The pivots happened. So Huddle started off as a Web3, like we wanted to use the infrastructures ready like Filecoin for recording. So at Huddle01, if you just type it right now, you can just do all the things you can do on Google Meet, Zoom. You can use your guest login or join by your MetaMask or your wallets and do all the things you can do on these platforms. But your recording gets stored over IPFS on the hot layer and Filecoin on the cold layer. You can use LivePeer for doing RTMP out and a lot of other things like NFT as an AR filter and all those other things as well. And that's how it all started off with. And then post our hackathon journey, we actually raised our first fund. We raised our angel round, I think, which Juan also mentioned about. That was the get traction stage. We raised some 50K from a couple of angels. And in all this process, as Juan was also mentioning about, we got help from the layer of from ETH Global Hackfest, where we got like help from Protocol Labs for the grants to the office hours, which was really, really important for us, to the stage of grants, to the stage of accelerator again, where we got brewed completely. We were very, really raw at that time. In the last 2 years, we actually matured a lot in that format. Post that, we got help in terms of building a team, in terms of legal, compliance, name it. So I think in terms of the help which you get, all the builders who are here, who are starting off with, the kind of help you get from the Protocol Labs team in general, in all the myriad of departments you can think of, is supremely underrated. I recently tweeted about that as well. And that's how we actually raised. So I just wanted to give a big round of applause to the Protocol Labs network team. It's been great, the kind of help we got. We wouldn't have been here if Protocol Labs hadn't been there. Now we are at a stage of where we raised our pre-seed round, our seed round, and now we are a team of 22 people and building strong. We built the product layer, the infrastructure layer, and also the protocol layer now. So yeah, thanks to the team and thanks Juan for having me. Yeah.
Thank you. That's awesome. Jonathan, do you want to come up as well?
Thanks for the invite. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, a little bit of a different story, but that's a really inspiring one. Generally, I think this was in 2018 or 2017. I was working at Consensus, and I learned of IPFS and Filecoin, and a few months later, quit to start an IPFS dev shop. And about 6 or 8 months into doing that, Protocol Labs hit me up, and they said, "Hey, do you want to build the wallet?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then it was like, "Do you want to run some nodes?" And yeah. It was like, "Do you want to build the multi-sig and help us with the SAP?" It was, yeah. And like this was the birth of Glyph. And basically, like, we had so much support from the Protocol Labs and Filecoin Foundation teams. We would not be in the business that we are if we didn't have that support. But it looks really similar to this. Like, I learned a lot about the world at Consensus. I experimented with ideas when I was, running the dev shop. I worked with a lot of really like moonshot Web3 protocols that didn't make it until eventually we got hit up about grants to build the wallet and the multi-sig. And now like we've had time and support from Protocol Labs to focus on the product that we feel really strongly convicted about, which is staking infrastructure. And so now we've kind of made it to the I don't know if we're in the grow the business stage yet, but like I feel like we're right there. We're right there. We're right there. Yeah, we're starting to think about marketing. So it's all fun. But thank you so much. And yeah, I welcome you to like just get involved. There's so much opportunity. This ecosystem is really mature, but it needs a lot of help, and we need more smart, bright people to contribute. So yeah, come join.
Awesome. Thank you. Cool. So I wanted to end by flashing some of these again. Like, there's a ton of really interesting things to build enabled by FVM, and just give I want to end with like a huge round of applause for all of the people involved in making FVM a reality, because this has been a 2-year-ish journey. So thank you so much to everybody working on FVM. And let's have some food.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming today and also share a little bit about the Filecoin Foundation. So the Filecoin Foundation started as an idea since the Filecoin white paper, but we have been around to really support the growth of the Filecoin ecosystem. We do everything from governance to security to giving developer grants in the ecosystem, and we're so grateful for everyone that has shown up. We also do a lot of support for our wonderful storage provider community, many of which are here. So thank you so much. But I wanted to end by everyone also giving a huge round of applause to all the staff that made this hackerspace happen. So if everyone can go and thank everyone that have worked tirelessly behind the scenes. We have some great drinks, some great food. You can get t-shirts made with FVM. You can even get FVM tattoos. We can have a builder gun show if you guys want. So definitely mingle and get to know this wonderful community.